Welcome to Ben and Curt Till It Hurts. I'm Ben.
And I'm Curt.
And it's halfway through the year somehow. We totally missed that, right?
I know. This is going to be a very long episode.
You're calling it right up front?
I don't know if we should fight it and try to just bang through it, or if we should just be we're talking about a lot of stuff, so welcome to a 6-hour podcast.
Yeah. Welcome to potentially the longest episode of Ben and Curt Till It Hurts.
Better not be the longest episode.
No,
We've broken 3 hours, so
yeah, that was rough.
But at least we had a cool guest for it, and we weren't just looking at each other the whole time.
That's true. Notice that I have also angled my chair differently, so I'm not looking at you anymore.
Not directly at me. You know what it is now? It's so much hotter in here. When you directly have to look at my sweaty face, it's a lot more unsettling.
It's extremely distracting. I end up in this uncanny space.
You are very sweaty and wearing a white t-shirt, which you never do. For all you people that are listening, not in the room with us.
Yeah, well, we should definitely do the traditional beginning of the episode where we describe what we're wearing.
Yes.
Curtis is wearing a tasteful white t-shirt and shorts, I believe, right? Yep. And I am wearing all blue, I think.
Is that blue?
This is,
to me, that looks gray.
It looks gray. I think it's because of the light. In the light at school, it looked like I had blue jeans and a lighter blue shirt.
Okay,
which
is
a
nice summer outfit.
Which is a crazy person's outfit, I understand.
Everyone made fun of me all day.
Everyone, all day. My kids. My nonverbal kids.
They pointed. I knew.
They pointed and laughed.
So, as you said, we are halfway through the year, and we're going to be spending this episode talking about some of our favorite media things.
Yeah, some of the stuff. So, we are always we're the kind of people who coldly compiled lists, right? Mm-hmm. We like to list the things that we do. I've got a document. I'm sure you have a document.
Yes. All
the things that we have looked at, basically.
Then we choose some good ones.
And at the end of the year, we're excited to put together our year-end lists,
Yep.
And it's interesting to halfway through the year say, hey, what's come out already?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit, what are we looking forward to?
And I think, because that was kind of what I had said last time, was that, there are a good chance that a number of these things, maybe half, will be on the end of the year list. So it's kind of good to do you can touch base. You might be able to get some ideas for things you might want to check out if you're not as apt to keep up with current things.
Yeah.
But before we start, and actually before we even get into what we've been up to real quick, I have a quick shout out I need to give to World Zero. It's a new gaming store that opened up in Lewiston, and I went, and it was sick.
Yeah?
Yeah, so...
What kind of gaming are we talking about here?
They sell retro games and new games, and they do, I guess, PC repair, which I didn't even know people still did PC repair. But it was cool. I stopped in. I bought some plushies. They were old plushies, too, so I was stoked. They're from the early 2000s. So...
Where in Lewiston is it?
It's right around the corner from Zimmy's.
Which,
if you're not familiar with Lewiston, that means nothing. But, but you should check it out if you're in the area and you like buying old games, because the dude who owns it, he was a NES collector. I talked to him for a little while because my friend works there. And he was going for a complete NES collection, which is 900 games.
It's a lot of friggin' games.
And he kind of had a fun moment where... I say fun. Wasn't fun at all. He, I believe he said he bought a copy of Little Samson, which is a very expensive NES game. And I won't say how much he said he spent on it, because I feel like that might not be information he wants.
Here's a shout out and also a public shaming.
But he said at that point, he was once he had it, he was wow, I just spent this much on one game. And then he he sold his NES games to fund his dream to have a gaming store. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, that's a cool story.
It was a cool guy, cool story. So figured I'd give him a
cool
shout
guy,
out.
cool story, cool store.
Yep. So, what have you been up to, Ben?
Well, Curt, in the annals of this podcast, this will be a special episode. Ooh. Because I think probably half the episode so far I've mentioned Spelunky in some capacity. My secret dark shame is that despite having played dozens of hours of Spelunky, I had never beaten it until now. until now. I finally beat Spelunky.
That's
and it
awesome.
It feels good.
Did it feel good?
It feels good to beat that game.
How many days ago did you beat it?
Like 3.
You still walking around feeling pretty good about yourself?
I'm still thinking about it.
You still trying to like make shots with trash in the basket, like yeah.
I'm like remembering specific moments. It's like, oh yeah, then I was worried because I didn't have the jetpack yet, but then I found the mother brain thing and I fought that and then bombed through the wall and then I had the jetpack and the shotgun.
And it all turned out okay.
It all turned out okay. I beat that stupid end boss. I'm not gonna spoil it for Have you touched Spelunky anymore?
Nope.
I'm
a bad person.
Someday you'll be as good at Spelunky as I am.
I just need you to train me.
Yeah, we'll do some Karate Kid style training shit. It's like, Curtis, the whole time you were washing my windows, I was actually teaching you how to beat the jungle, the second level of Spelunky. That's the key, is the patience that it takes to wash the windows properly without streaks is the same patience you need to get through the jungle.
Yeah.
That's true advice.
And then I'll be like, what about when I was washing your dishes? And you'll be like, that was just you washing the dishes.
I did not even ask you to do that.
You really trained very well.
You dove right in. Love the enthusiasm.
But that did not help you at Spelunky in any way.
If anything, it hurt you.
Yeah. Softer hands.
Yeah, your hands they slide too easily off the control stick. Beat Spelunky, real jazzed about that. Other than that, I've just been doing stuff that we're going to talk about in the mid-year wrap-up anyway. What have you been up to?
I was kind of in the same position where when I knew we were going to be doing this particular episode, I started like really binging and like re-listening and re-watching things that I liked. And then I was like, oh man, I need something to talk about for the beginning of the episode. So I watched the movie Green Room, which I had not seen.
Everybody's watching that movie but me.
Yeah? I
gotta watch that movie.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah?
It was really good.
What'd you like about it?
I liked that it... I don't know. It's kind of... There's like a pro and kind of a con. And the pro was that I felt like it was a believable scenario, with suspended disbelief. But it wasn't an outrageous scenario. And the characters, in a way, they performed like characters in a believable way. For those of you that don't know what the movie is about, it's about this punk band that they get a gig and they get to the gig and they realize it's a skinhead bar and they're like, well, we'll do it anyway, we need the money. And then something really bad happens and they're kind of like trapped in the green room. They're being held hostage and they have to like escape. And this, I hope this isn't too spoilery, but what I really liked about it was that there was no like Rambo moments where it was just like, okay, everything that happened was like pretty believable on the realm of things that happened in the movie. They didn't go from like little skinny punk kids to like throwing grenades or and like killing everybody. Like it was just very believable. The only thing that I didn't really find awesome about it, I guess that might not even be a really good way to say it, but it's hard for me to like empathize with characters when they constantly like make choices that you would not make. So it's like that's why I think people like slasher movies, as I was kind of comparing it earlier, is like you like the slasher because you're like, oh, these kids they have premaritals and they do drugs and now Jason's gonna come kill them. So there was a lot of like, I kind of don't know what this situation would be like because I would never have chosen any of these choices. I would have been safe in my car in a different state at this point. But it was really good. I highly recommend it.
Did you ever see that director's and writer? I think he wrote and directed Green Room. His previous movie?
I have not.
I wish I could remember his name. His previous movie is called Blue Ruin.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
I need to see it.
Yeah,
based on the strength of this movie.
Yeah. And from what I've heard, I think a lot of people agree that Green Room is better, but they still love Blue Ruin. Blue Ruin made like a big splash in the independent cinema scene a couple years ago. It's this like grubby guy gets out of prison and then goes on a road trip to get his revenge on the people who ended up getting him in prison. It's just like a bleak look at revenge. Which makes it an interesting palate cleanser after Tarantino, which is a very...
I was going to say, you guys know that Curt and Ben love some revenge.
We are very interested in the concept of revenge. And let me tell you, Blue Ruin adds a lot to that canon of work.
Yeah. That's all.
Anything else?
Has been, like, not new stuff, so...
Yeah. All right, let's talk about how we're going to do this, okay? Because I was thinking about this while we were talking about it.
That's good, because I didn't discuss this with you at all, and I didn't really make a plan.
Yeah. Sometimes it's best to just hash this stuff out on air.
You thought about it.
So what I think maybe we should do is, if the impetus of this is like, not a preview, but like a preview of our year-end list, the way that we should rate each of these pieces of culture is how likely do we think it is that they are going to end up on our year-end list.
Okay.
Like, there's nothing on here that I know is not going to end up on my year-end list.
Yeah.
But I think it would be interesting, because there's definitely a scale of how much I loved these things.
Yeah.
And there are some that I'm like, this is a sure shot. And there are others that are like, probably not.
Yeah. No, I feel that. Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah.
Because I, like, on my music one, I have, like, more than 10, which I'll try not to, like, spend an hour on it. But, so, for me, I know some of them aren't going to be, to some extent, but then some things grow on me over time. I'll have creepers and stuff, and some things are just worth mentioning, because, like, you know, for some reason they won't. I have a few that I know they're not going to be on my end year list, but they're worth mentioning. Like, so, yeah, so we're going to be talking about albums and movies and video games.
Yeah, and just to give the lay of the land of this, Curtis, you, I believe, have more music than anything else. You've got a lot of music, 10 plus instances. I have way more games than anything else. I've been playing a lot of games this year. It feels good, and I've got a lot of games that I'm pretty sure are going to be on my year-end list. And I don't think either of us has that many movies.
I've seen 3 new movies this year.
Yeah,
and I have a couple that I have wanted to see that came out this year that I didn't get a chance to. So,
you want to knock movies out first?
Yeah, let's blow through movies. So, what have you seen this year?
Oh God, can I even remember? Well, most recently, most present in my mind is something that you also just saw, which is Baby Driver.
Yeah, just saw that today.
The new film by Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah,
Hot
I was going to say,
Fuzz.
that's that man, right?
Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim, and
World's End.
And The World's End.
Yep.
And then he also had the TV show Spaced before. I'm a bit of an Edgar Wright completist.
Yeah.
I really love his work, which made Baby Driver an interesting experience for me.
I also found it to be an interesting experience for different reasons.
Yeah.
All right, how do you want to... What did you think about it?
What did I think of Baby Driver? I really liked it as almost like a piece of experimental film in the field of audio design.
Yep.
Which is something that... Are you familiar with Edgar Wright's other movies? You've
I've seen Shaun of the Dead quite a bit. I really like that movie. I haven't seen Hot Fuzz in years, but I did not enjoy it very much. I thought it was all right.
We should do an episode about Hot Fuzz.
We should. Yeah, we can do.
It's a perfect movie.
Oh, I was gonna say we can do. I mean, if it's perfect, we can just do Hot Fuzz. But we could do his filmography.
We could do an entire Edgar Wright episode.
We could do. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be 2
He
episodes.
only has 4 movies, so
yeah,
better than 8.
8 movies into 3 episodes. So for me. Shit, I got totally lost. Shaun of the Dead, I think, is a good reference point for this, because the moment in Shaun of the Dead that I think prefigures Baby Driver is the part in the bar at the end when they're hitting the zombie with pool cues, and it's like synced up to the Queen song.
Yep.
That, to me, is the preview for what Edgar Wright would later try to turn into a feature-length film based pretty much solely on that idea. Like, everything other than that idea that, like, the music syncs up with the action, syncs up with the sound effects. Like, all that stuff is in sync, and there's a rhythm to this film that is really unique that I haven't seen anywhere else. It's a worthwhile experiment, but I don't necessarily know that it made one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I thought it was as good as a movie can be, but I still feel like I don't need to watch it again. Like, and that's kind of, it was a good movie, good experience, and I'm not gonna buy it. Like, I don't need to watch it again.
And you buy a lot of movies.
I have a kind of a wall of movies we're looking at, but yeah, I felt like it was a visual Tom Waits album. Like, it was kind of I like when people romanticize things, even if I don't care about what they're like romanticizing. And that's what I like about some Tom Waits albums, specifically like Blue Valentine and Nighthawks at the Diner. They're a romance story about all-night diners and, you know, greasers in the 50s. Like, they're things that I don't really care about, but in the context of the stories that he tells, I really enjoy the music about them. And this was a movie that I really enjoyed that was it was cars and, you know, old music and, you know, just I felt it was very 50s themed. Mm-hmm. And I don't really care particularly about the 50s as a decade, but I really enjoyed it. As a huge fan of music, I was very appreciative of the wide range of music that was in the film, and you know, it was cool to just see all the vinyl and see him mixing music, and there's a lot of fun stuff like that for as a person who is also obsessed with music. Yeah,
it was like a love letter to the process of making music, or to the process of noticing music in the world around you.
Yeah.
It feels like a minor Edgar Wright film, but still something that was worth making, and I'm glad I watched it.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. What other movies have come out?
I saw Kong Skull Island.
Oh, yeah?
Which I enjoyed a lot. As a standalone movie, I thought it was really good. I did not think it was as good as the 2014 remake of Godzilla. Mm-hmm. And as much as I loved both movies, I'm like less than stoked, I guess, that there has to be like a monster verse now, because
a cinematic universe.
Yeah,
of course, that's all that makes money in movies these days.
Why can't we just have a good movie and be done with it? Like
the fucking Universal Monster Cinematic Universe.
Yeah. So it's just weird that I liked both of those movies so much, and I look forward to other ones coming out, but I don't want to have to rewatch the other ones every time a new one comes out so it makes sense. Which I feel like you might not have to with this, because Godzilla came out before they really knew they were going to... I mean, before they knew they were going to do that. Right. And then I think Kong was contained enough to just be one story. Mm-hmm. And I really liked it. Just a good adventure movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Oh, man, cinematic universes suck, though, don't they? Like, let's just talk... We probably have beaten this drum before, but fucking cinematic universes are the worst thing. It's like they took the exact wrong lesson from comic books.
Yeah.
Which is like, you make a lot of money when people have to have seen everything to understand the next one, right? Yeah. So if we make all movies that we put out, like all big tentpole movies, all part of the same story, then it's going to be a terrible story, but it's going to make us a lot of money because people are going to feel obligated to watch it, and we'll just keep the characters just interesting enough that, hey, you're a Hulk guy, go see Avengers.
You're kind of losing me, but yeah. I agreed with you, and now we're kind of veering a little bit.
Okay, what's your point of disagreement?
So this leads well into the fact that I saw Wonder Woman as well, and I really enjoyed it. I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to, but okay, how can I say this? I find it strange that when the Justice League was created as a comic book idea, I may not be entirely right on this, but I am in the belief of the Justice League was put together as an idea because kids did not have much money, and at the time kids were buying comic books, so let's put all these characters in one comic to, you know, that way kids can just buy the one comic and not have to keep up with the money and availability of all these different superheroes. And I think that was a very noble thing. I mean, I'm sure it was profitable, but I think it was a very noble thing to just say, hey, it's not super easy for all these children who are our main readers to get our books, so let's put all the characters in one book, Justice League, now you have all your heroes in one story. I think that was a very noble thing to do, and now I think it's the exact opposite of that, where it's like, we need to put each one of these characters in its own movie, so you string people along the whole time, and you get every dollar out of them. And I don't know. But that being said, I like the DC movies so far. I don't think they're perfect, but I really liked Man of Steel. as a comic book fan, I'm like cringing because I'm afraid this is going to get back to my best bud Mike, who's going to just like kill me. As a comic book fan, I love Batman vs Superman. It's so dense with the amount of like Easter eggs and like, ooh, that's a thing that you have to know about comics to know about. But as a movie, the theatrical release was less than great. I'm like a robot who's being told to kill its master. I can't do it. I'm like, the theatrical release was less than awesome. And the hyper whatever ultimate cut was a lot better. It was a lot better than the theatrical cut.
I'm having to do like some mental gymnastics to figure out what you're even saying.
I'm gonna leave it at that. And then Suicide Squad was fun. I definitely think it was the weakest. And I really enjoyed Wonder Woman. I think it was the most standalone film, aside from Man of Steel, because they didn't know they were going to do the connectivity thing. It was a really put together... There was no other Justice League people in it. They mentioned... she writes a letter to Bruce Wayne. That is the extent of it. But it was just a very good movie. I like American history, so it was very like World War One, and they did a really great job with Wonder Woman. I can't remember the name of the woman who directed it.
Oh God, she also directed Monster.
Yeah. Anyway, it was fantastic.
Pat.
Yeah, it's Pat something. But I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, Pat. But you made a great movie, and
Patty.
Yeah, Patty.
Shit.
I'm not going to say it because I'll fuck it up. Yeah, you made a great movie, and I'm very excited I'm more excited for Justice League than I was, because that really got me amped up. Maybe it's just a good year for adventure films. Like, I had Kong and Wonder Woman and just Amazons, jungles. But, yeah, I guess I don't have much else to say about it that is really pressing. I really liked it. I liked it more than I thought I was going to. Laura really liked it, and she was like... She's my soon-to-be wife is a teacher, and her kind of whole thing was like, there are little girls that are going to see this, and like this is like the first superhero they're going to have. She was like, when I was a kid, it was all princess movies, and that's great, and princesses are really cool, but it's really awesome that now girls have both, and you can choose who you want your heroes to be. And I think that the movie kind of had a good message with that. It wasn't super pro-America. It was pro-humanity. And it was just I really enjoyed it. But that's...
Now, see, what Laura was talking about is why more little girls need to be watching Kill Bill. More little girls need to be watching Kill Bill, and when they get a little older, Inglourious Bastards.
I agree. I think... and I don't know much about the heroes of young women, because I've never been a young woman, so
well, from the women that I've talked to, they have tended to find, I mean, little girls can take inspiration from male characters. Sure. is one thing. So a lot of little girls will find, from what I've heard, will find male characters that they relate to on some level.
Never been a woman.
Only talked to some.
Couple of them, anyway.
Couple of them. I've known a couple women in my life. And also, you find a lot more of that stuff in slightly less popular forms of media, like books, for instance. You can find many more role models for young girls in the realm of literary fiction. Which is outside the purview of this show, so I'm not going to go any deeper into that.
I don't want to talk about books, Ben.
Every time you mention a fucking cinematic universe, I'm going to mention books, all right? That's the deal. This podcast sucks.
Yeah, this is like homework again.
I hate homework. All right. What other movies have come out? I honestly can't remember what movies have come out.
So the only other ones that I have are... ones I have not seen, but I am very interested in, that came out this year. I have not seen All Eyes on Me, the Tupac biopic, which is coming on the heels of the very successful 2015 Straight Outta Compton. But I've heard that it is nowhere near as good as Straight Outta Compton, and it's getting panned across the board.
It looked really bad from the trailer I saw.
I think I saw a teaser trailer. I don't even know if I saw an actual trailer. And then the other one that I really wanted to see and I didn't get a chance to was Alien Covenant.
Oh, jeez.
Which I've heard fans love it, critics hate it. Just one of those typical franchise film, you know.
Isn't that a cinematic universe now, too?
I mean, I don't know how they refer to, like, direct sequels. I don't think the AVP ones take place in the same canon.
I mean, if they do, then there's some significant discrepancies that you have to take into account.
Even Predators doesn't account for Predator 2.
Okay.
So it's pretty...
Oh, that's weird. They're
kind of just like one-shot stories for the most part. Predators references Predator 1, but that's about it.
Yeah. So you didn't see Alien Covenant?
No, but I would really like to. Yeah. I also really want to see Atomic Blonde. I had not heard about that until... actually, I had heard about it because Mike said I did a top 10 anticipated movies of 2017 podcast a few months ago, and that was one of the ones that Mike had on his list, but I didn't know anything about it, and then I saw the trailer, and I was like, that was pretty freaking good. Like, I said frickin' because I was going to say fucking, and then, like, I thought I was at work or something. Sorry, I said frickin', everybody. I will say fucking next time.
Save it for the apology segment.
Yep. Yeah. That's coming in every episode.
Yeah, it should be. It belongs here.
What else? No, I'm looking forward to Jumanji, even though it's going to suck.
Jumanji looks pretty good. I don't know. Like, I'm a snob, but Jumanji looks like in a year that has had surprisingly good adventure movies. Yeah. Jumanji looks like it could be a surprisingly good adventure movie. Plus, The Rock.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
He has the ability to make bad things okay.
He really does.
Power Rangers came out, which I had been excited to see, and the more I found out about it, the more awful it looked, so...
You didn't see it?
No.
I heard it was pretty good.
I heard it was pretty awful.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is a riveting discussion.
Yeah. I heard. Well, neither of us can verify,
all right, there we go. End of it.
Yep. That's why you listen to this show, right?
Everybody wants to hear what we've heard.
It's like ambiguous statements.
Yeah. We see ourselves in more of a curatorial role.
There definitely was a Power Rangers movie this year.
A Power Rangers movie exists. I saw a movie called The Beguiled that came out this year. Pretty good.
There you go.
End of story. It's a Civil War period piece towards the end of the Civil War. This house where these two women live with these children, these young women. And the women, I believe the youngest, finds a dying Union soldier. This is in Virginia towards the end of the Civil War. So they take him in and chaos ensues, essentially. Oh. But not that much chaos. And not chaos that's particularly that interesting.
Oh, okay.
It was a pretty good movie. It's the new, oh my god, why can't I remember her name? We have a real problem with not being able to remember women's names on the show. Between the director of Wonder Woman and the director of this movie, her name, I'm going to do something really offensive. I'm going to remember her name by remembering her father's name. Her father, she is the daughter of Francis Ford Coppola.
Oh, okay.
Her name is something Coppola. Oh, God. Kill me now.
Shut the mics off. I do not know where to take this.
Shut this thing down. She's a really great director. I think the script had some issues.
Yeah.
But it was a good movie. 0% chance it ends up on my final list. I would probably rather have... This is going to make it sound like I hated it, but it's just to be truthful about how I really felt about it. I would rather have only 9 movies on my end of your list
than have to
insinuate that The Beguiled was one of my 10 favorite movies.
Oh my god!
I enjoyed watching it.
So this is my top 10. Number 9. No.
Yeah.
Not The Beguiled.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's about it. I watch a lot of old movies. I don't keep up with movies like I do music. So
movies are tough.
Yeah. It can be I just feel like it can be a really hit or miss year for movies. That you're more apt to have a hit or miss year with movies than you are with games or music because there's just a lot more music and games. But so yeah, do you want to get into music or do you want to do games first? It's kind of I don't really know which way to go first because we're both so weighted on one.
I wonder if we should. Is alternating? Nah,
No,
let's not
probably a bad
alternate. Let's start with music. The director of The Beguiled is Sofia Coppola, and I believe the director of Wonder Woman is Patty Jenkins.
That is it.
It's Patty Jenkins?
Yep.
Okay. Whew, I feel better now. I didn't even... I did pick my phone up. I did not look. So I remembered those names.
Okay. So, what do you have? Do you have much for music?
For music, I think we have a lot of crossover on my music list, and you just have way more.
Okay.
So for music, for me, I mean, probably... Let's just start where we start. Vince Staples is absolutely going to end up on my year.
He is on my mentionables as well.
Yeah.
That was a great album.
Yeah, Big Fish Theory is a real masterpiece.
Yep.
The production, the depth of the lyrics, the sheer number of allusions and references that he makes, and also the fact that alongside those allusions and references, it also sounds fresh as fuck.
Yeah.
That's a tough line to walk.
Yeah.
And Vince Staples is walking it. What do you think? What are the chances that it ends up on your end of your list?
I would say pretty good. I think for me...
Have you listened to it anymore?
I have. It's been in the car a lot, so I haven't sat down and focused. And kind of the similar situation the last time, I can really only speak to the production on it because I have yet to analyze any lyrics or really listen. But I just really like the electronic and how kind of atmospheric it is. I'm also realizing that I'm going to make a preemptive apology for this. I'm learning now that I need to expand my vocabulary when describing music because I say the same words to describe different sounds. I say atmospheric a lot.
Okay.
But I just thought that sometimes the beat wasn't very busy and it really gave Vince room to breathe, and it just, he shined more than the production, but the production was still great, so it just kind of worked really well.
Yeah, I like on that album how every song sounds pretty different.
Yeah.
It doesn't, even in the production style, but also in how Vince is rapping. Each song is distinct from all the other songs, and I'm not well versed enough in this to be able to speak to it extemporaneously, but from what I've read in reviews, a lot of those songs' production styles are specific references to types of music, types of electronic music that have been popular. So there's the British influence, and then there's a lot of parts that are the Detroit techno scene from the early 90s or whenever.
Yep.
So it is interesting to say, oh, that kind of reminds me of this other song. The note that it ends on, the rain come down, the very end of that with it sounds like a G-Funk song.
Yeah.
It sounds like the kind of thing you would hear in a West Coast hip-hop song from the early to mid-90s. But it's a little bit off-kilter. So it's not appropriating that stuff directly at face value, but it is taking a snapshot of it, and then twisting the snapshot a little bit to say, hey, we know this happened already. We're just going to put our little twist on it.
Here's a new take on this older idea.
Kind of similar to the way Tarantino describes the way that he did Reservoir Dogs. He's it's a heist movie, but with my own little twist on it.
Yeah. That
you never see the heist. I like that kind of thing.
Actually, now that you mentioned Tarantino, I did...
Let's talk about Tarantino for 2 hours.
No, I do want to say that not being very familiar with... Not super familiar with Edgar Wright films, I felt in a lot of ways that Baby Driver kind of felt like a poor man's Tarantino film. It was kind of fixated on this old era of music, and people talked in ways that they don't actually talk, and I felt a lot of where the music was so connected to what was going on. I got a lot of Tarantino vibes from it, but
speaking of the dialogue, this will be the last thing we say about Baby Driver. I'm so sorry. Speaking of the dialogue, I felt that same thing about it. It's very cliche, but it was so consistently cliche, and each character was accessing their own distinct type of cliche, that I thought it really worked. It felt like it was a knowing appropriation of those cliches, especially Kevin Spacey's character. Kevin Spacey's character in that film, I don't think ever has a line that is not a cliche of some kind. He totally straight-faced. He's
really great in that.
Yeah. He knows how to deliver those lines in a way that tells you, I know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I know this is ridiculous, but I'm not going to blink. I'm not going to wink at the camera. Shit. Okay. We just rewound like half an hour on this podcast. Right. What else is going on musically?
Back up. Okay.
Vince Staples, definitely probably on both of our end of year lists.
Yep.
Big Fish Theory. Pick it up.
What else you got?
What else do I have? I have, well, let's talk about these two albums together.
Okay.
Pallbearer.
Yes.
Heartless.
Yes.
The name of the band is Pallbearer. The name of the album is Heartless. Elder, the band, and their album, what's it called?
Reflections of a Floating World.
Reflections of a Floating World. Did you look into what that title means?
No.
So the Floating World was apparently I looked up a couple. This might have been from an interview. I'm not sure. It was from a review. The Floating World is a reference to a period in Japanese society where, like, the economy flourished, and along with that, the arts flourished, but eventually it crumbled, right? And the writer of this album, Reflections of a Floating World, by Elder, said that he sees something similar happening right now, where we have this flourishing of artistic scenes, but the foundation that it's based on, the economic foundation that it's based on, is starting to crumble a little bit. Like, the foundations of capitalism are starting to look a little shaky.
Yeah.
You know,
People are starting to ask questions.
Not to get too political on this show, yeah. But we are existing in a period of time that many people call late capitalism, and not ironically anymore. Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting reference.
Yeah.
That was a pretty erudite reference. It's also a sick album.
Yeah. Musically very good.
What genre would you call this Elder album?
I call it doom metal.
You call it doom metal?
Yeah.
Okay. I can get behind that, but it doesn't have the... It seems distinct from doom. I don't know. It's a little too fast to qualify as doom for me.
Well, I think... So it's hard to say. I'm not an expert in doom metal, but I think there's a very strong... This is like anyone that doesn't care about metal is not going to give a shit about this.
That's fine, but if they don't care about metal, they shouldn't be listening to the show. Either they care about metal or they care about one or both of us.
So I think you have... When you have doom metal, that is a very encompassing phrase that includes bands that sound very different. And I think if you compare them to Sleep, it doesn't sound like the band Sleep. Mm-hmm. But I think Sleep falls into, I think, the subgenre of stoner doom, which I think, like your Electric Wizard, your Bong Ripper...
What are we even talking about?
Yeah, these are band names.
Yeah.
So these are stoner doom, and that really shows the long, droning, lifeless, repetitive doom music. And then I think that these two albums, Heartless and
Reflections
of a Floating World, they show a livelier version of doom metal. So you might not be able to compare it very well to some music that is doom metal, but I think it falls under that wide umbrella. Like I consider like Black Sabbath a doom metal band, just because of lyrical content and a sound that I really think that most of these, it's hard with Black Sabbath because they, in my opinion, like invented metal, mm-hmm. but it may not seem like they're very similar at all, but I just think that they're the godfathers of metal, and I think that both of these bands just take different aspects of their same sound.
Okay,
and
all right, I see what you're saying.
So they're very different, but I think they kind of... It's like taking after different traits from your parents. If you look more like one of your parents than the other one, mm-hmm. you're still their kid. You're just like, don't look exactly like your brother. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense to me.
But great album.
Great album. What do we like about this album?
Are we talking about...
Let's start with... Heartless came out first, right? Let's talk about Heartless, because I think we talked about Heartless a little bit on the show before.
Yeah, we found that one independently. And we both were like, this is sick.
Yeah.
I really liked Pallbearer's last album, Foundations of Sorrow, or Foundations of Burden. I can't remember which one it is. We've had this same conversation on the podcast.
I think it's Burden.
It is Burden. You're right. I just really like it has the droning and just kind of like hum that doom metal has, but it just also has really nice singing and like kind of those soaring guitar solos, and just it's a very warm doom sound, and I just really like it feels like a journey whenever you listen to a doom album, because it's just like it's 4 songs but it's an hour long, you know, like
it's an emotional arc that you're gonna go on.
You just really can just sit with headphones on and just vibe to this like droning heaviness that kind of takes over you. And I think both of those albums do that really well. I've only listened to Reflections once all the way through, and that is kind of more of it has 4 songs on it or whatever, and they're each 12 minutes long.
I think it's like seven songs.
Yeah.
A bunch of them are like 12 minutes long.
Over 10 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
And I think Pallbearer reined it in a little bit. It's more metal and less doom, but it's still it came out pretty early in the year, and I was like, this is going to be on my top 10.
Yeah.
This is a great album.
Yeah, I felt the same way about Heartless, and I feel the same way about Reflections of a Floating World. I love that album. I might have listened to it more than you at this point.
Yeah, you have.
Despite so the way this came about was like Curtis and I went back and forth about what we were going to do this episode about, and we each sent each other like a list of stuff that we were likely to talk about so we could get acquainted with it. And I started going down Curtis's list of music, and like, okay, a little bit of hip hop I haven't heard, like Kodak Black, like stuff that kind of like I was excited to talk a little bit about it. But it didn't like get into my brain. This Elder album, Reflections of a Floating World, got into my brain. Yeah. Like it has been living with me, and I'm upset that I only started listening to it like a couple days ago.
Yeah.
So I haven't listened to it as much as I would like to have listened to it.
That's the same situation that I'm in, is that I feel it's almost like, God, I kind of wish I had more to say about it, but I've only listened to it once and I just really enjoyed it. So I haven't had time to like analyze it. But right now it seems like it's a contender definitely for a top 10 spot.
The experience that I've had listening to Reflections of a Floating World is you sit down, you're going to listen to it, right? It's like, all right, I'm going to pay attention to everything. But it just gets ahead of you so fast.
Yep.
You know, you're sitting down, you're listening to it, you're kind of tracking the different parts like you do. And you very quickly, even if you're trying to stay above the waves, you find yourself pulled underneath the surface of the music and just like ripped back and forth with the different currents that are going on. But it's not unpleasant. Yeah. It doesn't, like, I don't think there are any like harsh vocals on it.
No, I don't
or anything.
So.
He has a very nice voice.
It can be hard for me anyway to analyze doom metal in particular, because it's hard to sit and focus, because it's it's music that's made to make you zone out and just kind of like chill. So like it's hard to like all of a sudden you're thinking about other things, and they're each album's like over an hour long. It's hard to just sit there and like focus on music for an hour. But I think they're both great. They're both very well could be in the top 10.
Yeah, both of those. I think Elder is definitely in my top 10. Heartless most likely in my top 10.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Slipping for you?
Maybe I just haven't listened to it in too long. Like it's been a couple months since I last listened to that album.
Same for me as well.
The shine may have come off a little bit, or it might not have. Maybe I just need to sit down and listen to it again and remember.
Well, it's hard too with those albums that come out early in the year, because at that point you're struggling to find 10 albums that you like a lot, and then by the end of the year you have 30 and you're like, oh man.
Oh jeez.
You feel bad for number 21 because you're just like, you barely didn't make it, buddy. Sorry.
So that's Pallbearer. That's Pallbearer and Elder. Other than that, in addition, this is something that I know is on both of our lists.
Okay.
Kendrick Lamar. Damn.
Do you know it's on both of our lists?
I saw it on the list. Of
I thought you meant for our top 10 list.
No, it's not on. It's not on both of our top 10 lists. I honestly don't know if it's even going to make mine.
I don't.
This is something that like there's a chance. This one really depends on how the rest of the year looks for music.
Yeah.
I can easily imagine a situation where, 6 albums that are just good enough beat it out and make it so that the new Kendrick album is not on my list.
Yeah, I feel the same. I have always had a hard time really getting into Kendrick Lamar, and I think of all his albums, I appreciate To Pimp a Butterfly the most. And I listened to Damn, and I was like, no, this is good. I like this. And I haven't listened to it much more. I think it's it's just hard because where he came off, I don't know, he came off To Pimp a Butterfly, which was such a strong idea, and then he hit that with the complete opposite with Untitled Unmastered, which is just like a mixtape where none of the songs even
have... It's like a notebook.
We're just like, hey, here's some leftover stuff that I didn't finish or
right.
what didn't feel was fitting on the album. And then to come out with this, I will admit, even seeing the cover for the first time, I was like, is this a fucking joke? Like, it's literally just like he's standing against a brick wall with like Times New Roman just font that just says damn in capital letters, and I was like, wow, man, that's an album cover? Like, so I don't know, I liked it. I just don't think it's gonna have a hard time with Kendrick.
It has really inspired me to go back and listen even more to Pimp a Butterfly.
Yeah.
Which is friggin' amazing.
Humble's a good song.
Humble is a good song. Loyalty's a really good song.
Yeah.
I can think of a bunch of songs that I think are really good off Damn. And maybe if I went back and listened to Damn again, it would be somewhat higher. But like I kind of went through it a couple weeks ago to try to pick off some songs to put on like a playlist or something. And a lot of them weren't grabbing me. Humble kind of doesn't grab me anymore.
Yeah. I think for me, it's maybe now that I'm thinking about it, there was such a big focus and idea with To Pimp a Butterfly, and then the exact opposite of that with Untitled Unmastered. Mm-hmm. You kind of have both ends of the spectrum, and then anything else he puts out is just going to fall in the middle of that. So it's kind of, what can you say that you can't say more about either To Pimp a Butterfly or Untitled Unmastered?
I guess that's kind of true. I think the difference, the big conceptual difference between To Pimp a Butterfly and Damn to me is that To Pimp a Butterfly is a very cohesive, singular vision and it's a very personal vision as well, about like an attempt to, in one work, encompass so much about race relations in the United States. And To Pimp a Butterfly pulls that off incredibly well, while also being a very personal story. But Damn, I can't speak to Untitled Unmastered because I haven't really listened to it, honestly. Yeah. But with Damn, that is more of a grab bag a little bit. Like it has that single unifying vision for many of the songs, if not all, about Kendrick imagining a world where instead of getting to grow up, he was never born because his dad got killed. Yeah. Right? That's kind of the imagining, that's the inciting action of that album. But what the album is actually talking about a lot of times is sort of granular issues in hip-hop. It feels like a set of like think pieces about the state of hip-hop, which is a little bit of a smaller subject matter than the state of race relations in America.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's still worth engaging with, and I still really love a lot of the things that Kendrick does. Like I think DNA also is a really smart song. DNA and Loyalty are probably my two favorites on there, whereas before I would have said Humble was my favorite.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, who knows? Maybe I sit back down, start listening to Damn again, and find 5 new favorite songs that I never even paid that much attention to before. But as of right now, I could easily see it not being on my end of year list.
Yeah, it won't be on mine.
Yeah.
Even though the albums I have now, I could probably pick 10 that don't include Damn.
Right.
So, do you have anything else, or was...
Yeah.
What do you got?
This is an album that I'm not sure you have listened to. It's the new Thundercat album.
I've listened to part of it. And I listened to that. I re-listened to that song that you sent me.
I forget which one I sent you.
Me too.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah, the new Thundercat album, Drunk, is really great.
It's very much out of my style, so I have a hard time like critiquing it because I don't know what I'm comparing it to. So it was hard. I don't really know what I thought about it.
I guess I have limited experience in this field, but for me, the way I approach it is as kind of a, like, I don't want to call it a. I know Flying Lotus worked on this album, like he and Thundercat worked on it together in a lot of ways. I don't know what the nature of that collaboration was, so I don't want to overstep my bounds and say something that's not true. But I feel like the spirit of Flying Lotus all over that album.
Yeah.
And I know that that's not specific to Flying Lotus. I know that it's kind of the spirit of like the Brain Feeder crew of people, but it feels like a big Brain Feeder collaboration with like Thundercat at the helm and Flying Lotus as like the first mate.
Yeah. Like
kind of steering the ship together. But what I love about it is that it is about strange shit. Right? It does not take the usual subject matter while I think it falls within the purview of hip-hop, but I just think that proves that hip-hop is growing so much and encompassing so much past music. Yeah. Because, yeah, it's hip-hop. It's also, like, yacht rock. It's also so many other... It's also progressive rock of the 70s. It's also so many other genres. And at the same time, it's jazz. It's Thundercat's weirdly specific fast bass playing skills that you can tell. Like, you can tell when you hear Thundercat bass on a song. I don't know. I just love it. Thundercat, Drunk.
I'll have to give it a more solid listen.
We don't need to spend that much time on it because I'm the only person in the room who knows the album, and I don't even know it particularly well. But that whole Brain Feeder crew of people are a group that, like, I will listen to anything new that they put out. I trust the, like, artistic direction of that. I don't know if it's a record label or an imprint or whatever, but that group.
I do not know.
I trust the
you have
creative.
Faith in their creative endeavors.
I do. I have faith in the entire Brain Feeder crew. So that's the end of my list of music. Okay.
I will try to blow through mine as fast as possible because I have quite a few here. Some I'll hit a little bit more than others. Mine are in alphabetical order because I did not want to try to rank them in any way. So first, I mentioned this last time, finding it a little lackluster and hoping it would grow on me. But Grave Bloom by the Acacia strain has started to grow on me. I think the best way I can probably explain this is that I think their singer and the main lyricist is very nihilistic by nature. And I think that their music, maybe I'm trying really hard to like get on board with this album because they're like one of my favorite bands. I think their music is starting to approach a level of nihilism that their singer has been at for a couple albums. So I think when you first listen to it, and maybe I could be wrong, but when I first listened to it, it kind of washed over me. But since then, I've reflected on it a little bit, and I've had a couple thoughts, that being one of them, where maybe these songs kind of hit that same... They feel just like washing over you because they're the same level of like neutral as the singer is about life. The other kind of thought that I had is you have bands that grow by leaps and bounds with every album. And one of my other favorite bands is AC/DC, which they've put out the same album 16 times over 40 years. And I started to ask myself, if the Acacia strain is one of your favorite bands, at what point do you... I don't get mad when AC/DC puts out an album that's like, yep, that just sounds like some more AC/DC. So if they're one of your favorite bands, how many albums do they have to put out before you don't expect or maybe even want huge jumps in style? You just know what you like and that's what you want. So I think that is kind of maybe me also doing mental gymnastics to like this album. The other thing being you have time. If it's one of your favorite bands, you've had these albums for a while. You've listened to them for a while. And now this new one that you've only heard once, you're kind of supposed to like it as much as you like some of your favorite albums by your favorite band. And it's hard to force that. I feel like it's kind of like when you get a new dog, and you love your new dog, But you have some fucking good times with your old dog, and there's nothing wrong with your new dog. He's just not your other, your old dog. And then after a while, you're like, man, I love both of my dogs. How could I couldn't pick a favorite dog. I love both of my dogs with all my heart. I don't have kids, so I have to use dogs. And I think maybe that is kind of, I just listen to it like, this is the new album by my favorite band. I have to love it. And when you look at it like that, you don't instantly love it, but it's growing on me. That is one that I will speak a lot about. But next is Sleep is the Cousin of Death by A1, Deflo, and Phonics. A little collaboration. It's kind of some contemporary gangster rap, which is, they have a very 90s gangster rap sound, but, set in 2017, which is just it's very interesting to see people still exploring that sound. And I listened to it once, and I said, this is really good. I'm going to have to explore this again.
Have you listened to it anymore?
No, I haven't.
I actually listened. That was one of the ones that I listened to.
Oh, really?
Well. Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, it was.
The lyrics were really good. Like, I don't think I'm going to return to it, but just the fact that you can still find like new thematic ground about gangster rap, is really an amazing thing. And like this, the title, "Sleep is the Cousin of Death," extends so far through the album. Like, so many of the songs that I listened to all mentioned sleep, or this idea that I don't need to sleep. I'm better if I don't sleep. Or like, I'm not sleeping enough.
Shit, I should get some sleep.
I should probably catch a couple Z's. Yeah, that's a cool album. Really hard to find. Hard to find information about that album or about any of those guys.
I haven't looked into it at all.
And in fact, I'm curious about how you heard about it.
I heard about it on a Hip Hop Heads thread of like, these are 50 albums you probably haven't heard about this year.
Oh, there you go.
And that was one that had been bumped up to the top.
I bet there was a Cool AD album on there too.
There very well could have been.
Yeah,
he actually has some features on some Ghostface Killer stuff.
Really?
I believe so.
Oh, that's interesting. I'll have to look that up.
Next is Brother Minor, Passion Fruit Falls. That is, as far as I can tell, weird story. A record label from Australia started following me, and I was like, oh, I'll check it out. And it's just an independent label. He's an Australian artist, and he just makes, I guess you would call them hip-hop instrumentals. And this album is just fantastic. I'm almost positive it's going to be in my top 10, and I just kind of stumbled upon it. It's just one song has vocals. The other ones are just ethereal, warm.
I actually listened to this one as well.
Just very summery kind of. It falls into a genre of music that I made up that I think a lot of popular music is kind of across different genres is using this sound right now. And I call it like, it just makes me think of like an attic. Like it's just a warm, kind of dry. It makes me think of finding albums in your attic and just listening to it like on a sunny day in a dry attic. Like it's just a very warm sounding kind of. This album I call ethereal. It's just it's so pleasant, and it just almost feels tropical. Like, but not with like steel drums and not that instrumentation, just in style. I really loved it. It kind of reminds me of Mad Lib in a lot of ways, and I feel like that is a really big compliment that you can give to an artist. Next is Binge in Purgatory by D's Nuts.
Awesome album.
Never been a huge D's Nuts fan, but they are. I think they might also be Australian.
I think they're either Australian or from New Zealand.
And just a great hardcore album. Just a very chanty, sing along, angry, hard. Just I feel like the essence of what you want in a hardcore album. And I really enjoyed it. I've never been a huge fan of them as much as some of my other friends, but listening to this, I started to finally see like, okay, this is what you're going for.
Yeah, I get it now.
After that, I have Elder, which we already talked about. After that, Drop Top Wop by Gucci Mane. The more I listen to that, the more I start to like it. I love how short it is because it never gets stale. All the songs have this like dreamlike production where it sounds very trancy and kind of just like
that's Metro Boomin's thing.
Yeah,
right?
you just kind of like he just finds this kind of beat and you just kind of rock back and forth on it. And I think that hypnotic sound is very fitting to Gucci Mane's kind of hypnotic delivery of just kind of the way he does his hooks and choruses are very just repetitive, and I think they just match up really well. And the more I listen to it, the more I like it. And I actually do want to mention to you that after you mentioned it, when I hadn't noticed, I picked out the 2 Chainz verse on that album, and I thought it was fantastic. I was like, wow, that's really good.
So that album is not going to end up on my top 10 end of the year list. That 2 Chainz verse might end up on my top 10.
That'll be the number 10
of the year. Yeah, yeah,
just that'll be the verse.
That'll be the number 10 fill in. As this is my favorite album. This is my 10th favorite album. Just this 2 Chainz verse.
Next is Crossover Ministry by Iron Reagan.
Mm-hmm.
That album. Last year, I started to get into some contemporary thrash metal with Ghoul. Their new album was on my list last year, and Iron Reagan kind of follows that same path of they're just making some hardcore thrash music in 2017. And I don't really have much more to say to it than that. He just kind of hits that. If you like Ghoul or Municipal Waste or even Guar, just that kind of like party, drugs, rock and roll themed thrash music, it just really fits that well. And there's just lots of fun and funny elements to it. And they don't take themselves very seriously.
Well, hence the name of the band.
Which I really like in a thrash metal. It's a fun party metal.
They know they're a throwback, which is cool.
Next is Damage and Joy by the Jesus and Mary Chain. Mm-hmm. Shrugging here because I've never listened to anything by them. I'd noticed when I listen to new music, I mostly listen to hip hop and metal, and I was like, I think I even said on the podcast at one point, I don't follow contemporary rock bands, and this was one that very well might end up on my top 10 list. It's just I hate saying contemporary over and over again because these are all contemporary. These are all brand new albums.
They all came out this year,
but it's I would call it essentially acid rock, but new acid rock, and just very interesting to hear it in the context of 2017 and see what, like, oh, here's a thing that I haven't listened to anything since Pink Floyd's old stuff because I'm not a big into acid rock, and I was like, wow, this has come a long way in 50 years. Like, so I just thought it was a great album. I actually don't even have much to say about it. Just very catchy and entrancing, just very acid rocky.
Mm-hmm.
Next, Painting Pictures by Kodak Black. This will not end up in my top 10. I was excited to hear this because last year Kodak Black slid into my top 10 list at the end of the year with his mixtape Lil Big Pac, and then there was a bunch of bad stuff that he may or may not have done, and I was like, if I could go back, I would switch him out for Lil Yachty. But maybe this year Painting Pictures will be good, and I really like the mixtape. I just think it just doesn't have staying power. It's one of those similar, I guess, to how I described Baby Driver. Like, oh man, that was really good, but that's whatever. Like, I'm not gonna be listening to this.
It's not sticking with me.
2020.
I'm not surprised by how much I'm thinking about this days later.
Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. We talked about Damn. Just last week, Lil Wayne put out an EP it was like a 4-track thing called In Tune We Trust, and he, God bless him, is still trying to put the Carter 5 out after not being able to release it for years at this point.
What is that about? Why isn't he able to release it?
Don't get me started, Ben, because I am fascinated by this. So, Lil Wayne has been on a record label, I believe Young Money. He's been on that since pretty much the beginning of his career. He started rapping when he was about 12, and he was pulled under the wing of an older rapper named Birdman. Birdman owns either Young Money or Cash Money. I don't remember which one he owns. But he owns a bunch of artists on that label, and other artists that came up. He has a thing for... he's a a mogul. He sees the potential in young artists, and a lot of people feel he takes advantage of them. Nicki Minaj and Drake are other artists that he has seen talent in at a very young age and kept them under his wing. So Lil Wayne has been on Birdman's label for many years, and I guess when you sign, a movie contract to be in a cinematic universe or a franchise, you say, I will portray this character this many times. Lil Wayne has agreed to put out this many albums under Birdman's label, and then he gets to renegotiate his contract and figure out if he wants to stay with Birdman or leave. He had decided he wanted to leave. He was not happy with how things were going with Birdman. So Birdman, through some legal mumbo-jumbo, is essentially holding Lil Wayne's next album hostage. It has been done for a few years, and he will not let Lil Wayne release it, thereby forcing him to... He has not met that contractual obligation because he will not let him meet it. And he has to stay on the label, which means that Birdman makes money off of touring and merchandise and all the other non-album sales that Lil Wayne makes. And Lil Wayne's he's put out, I think, like 3 or 4 free mixtapes of material just to keep people like, I'm still doing this. He's giving away free music to let people know that he's still trying to be an artist. He put out an album with 2 Chainz where he's featured. It says every song is featuring Lil Wayne because Lil Wayne is not allowed to put out a 2 Chainz and Lil Wayne album. It's a very strange situation. But he put out he's kind of come out of the woodwork to be like, I'm still trying to do this, guys. Here's 4 songs. And they were really good. It falls into one of those things where I feel bad for EPs because a lot of times they can be great and just by the nature of only being 4 songs long, they can't hold up to 10 great albums. So it's worth mentioning. Probably won't make it the final cut. Next, I had Heartless by Pallbearer. After that...
Pallbearer?
Yeah. I had...
Heartless!
Yeah. I had Nightmare Logic by Power Trip. Another contemporary thrash band that I think, to my knowledge, they have these like set of rules. Basically, they make very heavy thrash music to the point where it's essentially extreme metal, but still considered thrash, even though their singer uses kind of growling, more extreme vocals. But the rule, I guess, they have imposed upon themselves when they are writing music is the drummer is only allowed to have 1 kick drum. So he's not allowed to do the rapid fire double bass that is a staple of most metal genres. So that kind of keeps them locked into this, we are a thrash metal band. And they just put out a great thrash album, which I've been exploring that new thrash, and I really like that a lot. Next, I don't even have much to say about it. The Wild by Raekwon of the Wu-Tang Clan.
Okay. He
put out an album. And it's a good album. It will not be on my top 10, but it's really nice to just hear an artist you like a lot. Sometimes. He's just doing what he does. He put out an album. Yep, that's Raekwon. That's a fine album.
What does Raekwon do?
He has... I love Raekwon because his voice is... You have the Wu-Tang Clan where he comes from, which is 9, in parentheses, or 10 members, that each had to develop their very own distinct style to sound unique in a group of 9 or 10 people. And Raekwon has this ability to... He just has these syrupy, smooth vocals that if you were to picture if a Raekwon album were just the earth of the world, the bedrock, just jagged and pointy, he is the water that pours over it. He is why it is a syrupy, smooth sphere. He just has a very rounded and very rich. He talks about, how well off he is, and it without sounding like bragging. He just speaks of a very lavish lifestyle that he has and still keeping true to his roots, and just a very good storyteller. So great, he just kind of does the same thing again.
Yeah.
Next, a little controversial here because of I'm just gonna throw it down. I am keeping Run the Jewels 3 as a runner of 2017 albums, even though it was released digitally on Christmas of 2016.
Yeah, I hope they know how fucked up they made our lives by making that decision.
I hope they... I guess it doesn't really matter.
Never before have I been so angry at a Christmas present.
Holy shit. I wonder to an extent if they hurt themselves. Because when you put out something, any media thing that close to the end of the year, you don't have time to process and reflect how much it means to you before the year is over, and then you can't call it an album of the next year because it was released on,
I mean, you can call it an album of the next year. You can say, all right, our cutoff is October 31st would be a crazy cutoff. All right, our cutoff for the end of the year is September 15th.
Yeah.
No, you can say, all right, anything that's released in December, or even in, the last half of December.
And I think that it's important to me to keep it on there because it's such a good album.
It belongs on there.
And technically, as not that I need an explanation, but the reason I justify it is because it was scheduled to come out January 17th or 18th, whatever, of January. They released it digitally for free on Christmas. So while it did come out in 2015, I like to consider it by that street date of when the physical albums came out. One of my favorites of this year. Very good. We're halfway through the year. I keep coming back to that album that came out on Christmas of last year as just, wow, what a fantastic album.
Another one where they're running over pretty familiar territory of it's not quite look how rich we are, because they never really make themselves come across as rich. Well, not never, but
yeah,
it's less often than other rappers. What they make themselves come across as is driven.
Yeah.
And
motivated,
idealistic, and powerful.
Yeah.
Because of those things, not because of how rich they are. They are powerful because of how clear their ideology is to them. And that's a fascinating way for rappers to portray themselves.
Yeah.
It's a really cool take on the whole rappers as braggarts thing, or hip hop as stage for bragging. Which I'm not denigrating that. I think that's a really wonderful piece of hip hop culture.
I think that is a very strong part of where hip hop comes from, and I think that is something that I enjoy in hip hop. So each Run the Jewels album kind of has its own particular theme, in my opinion, and this album they chose to go a more political theme, which is challenging because it can be divisive to your fans, and ideally you want as many people as possible to like your new album.
I don't think there were any All Lives Matter people listening to RTJ3.
It's very possible that you're right. I kind of forget. I don't want to insult Run the Jewels, but I kind of forget how not huge Run the Jewels are compared to other giant hip hop artists because they mean so much to me. I went and saw Run the Jewels for $20 at the State Theater, in the main State Theater.
And I regret missing that show.
Oh, dude, it was good.
Yeah.
Where if you were to see Lil Wayne or Jay-Z or Kanye West, you'd be spending $100 and driving to Massachusetts to see them.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, they really mean a lot to me. I think that this album, it's so hard to say what their best album is because they're all so good and different. But I think my favorite song off the album is Talk to Me. And I think that is a perfectly structured song. I think that alone is a giant chunk of why that album is so good. And just that it stays good throughout the whole. I think it maybe get a little bit weaker through the middle. I think you kind of have a few songs that kind of...
Boomaye is in the middle.
Yeah, that's track
Boomaye
5 or 6. And that's a banger with Danny Brown. What?
Yeah, Danny Brown's verse on that song's pretty good.
I don't know, I think Thieves is a less still good, still a very good song, but a lesser, and maybe Panther Like a Panther doesn't hold up.
I love both of those songs.
Yeah, I mean, they're all great songs.
It's
a fantastic album.
The thing I love about Thieves is the imagery. I think that they really nail... Well, that's one of their more overtly political songs on that album. But it's political about a thing that is really important to get political about, which is police killing black people, like, indiscriminately at times. It's a scary thing. And this image of, like, if we could... If in some magical moment... the spirits of all the people who have been slain by cops could all come up at once and show us, like, in a single visual, the enormity of this problem, then it would change the way people look at it. And Thieves, not that I was some all lives matter fucker, like, before listening to Thieves and changed my tune, like, the Scrooge style after listening to it. But it helped me to clarify to myself why this is so important.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That's cool that a song can do that. And then Panther Like a Panther, the like beat poetry part at the beginning is funny as hell. I love that bit.
I also, strangely, because I don't think it was meant to be one of the biggest songs on it, but Thursday in the Danger Room is one of my favorite songs on that.
Which one is that?
It's like track 14. It's the one where it's just two verses, and each...
it's about that's death, right?
Yeah, LP and Killer Mike both have very powerful verses about ways that death has impacted them in very different ways. LP talking about a close one that died in a hospital, and you watch them kind of slowly, slowly lose their life. And Killer Mike, tells a story of having to be the emotional support for a person whose loved one was a friend of his, whose life was just kind of taken as a random act of someone trying to steal his jewelry, his gold chain, and he tried to fight it, and ended up getting shot. And it's just two very different looks at the death of a loved one, which really, really sticks with me for some reason.
That song makes me cry every time I listen to it. And I think that's an important song for Run the Jewels to make, because Run the Jewels uses so much violent and death, involving imagery in their songs, and so much like rhetoric of death and violence, that I think having a song like Thursday in the Danger Room, where they pretty much, they utterly deny, I couldn't think of the word I was looking for there. They go against that idea that they could be some like purveyors of death for real. It's the violent imagery in Run the Jewels is pretty comfortably rhetorical. It's never like, you should really kill these people. Yeah, it's more like, you should feel like you want to kill these people.
Yeah, and then be constructive about it.
And then be constructive, but have that core of anger at people who have destroyed the world.
Yeah. So that is definitely...
Yeah, RTJ3. Maybe I'll put it on my list again this year. Fuck it. Came out twice. Why not?
Next is the new Spose album, Good Luck With Your Life. As a Mainer that likes hip-hop, I feel obligated to have to give a shout-out to Spose, the biggest rapper from Maine. I think his new album was really good. His last album, 3, or We Smoked It All 3, excuse me, gross, came out in the tail end of 2015. It was an honorable mention on my list last year because it came out in December of the year before. I thought that was good, but it hasn't lasted well with me. A couple songs I like a lot have stuck with me, but overall, I think Spose is hard. He kind of keeps telling the same story of, I'm a rapper, can you believe it? Like, nobody thought I could do it, and then I did it, and then I didn't like the way I had to do it, so I did it my own way, and I still did it. And you're like, that's cool, man. Like, but, and like, I can't ever say anything bad about Spose. I respect the guy so much, and I am so impressed by what he has done and made a living off of his dream. I can only hope to do that. But when you keep putting out music, my only criticism of him is when you keep putting out music and you keep telling the same story, I get to a point where I say, okay, but now what's going to happen?
What are you up to these days,
like,
Spose?
Are you going to keep going and get bigger? Are you going to hit this next level where he's even acknowledging the fact that has ridden the wave of this one-hit wonder, and now he's still going at it, and he's still trying to be successful. And you're like, okay, but, we have a few albums of, I hit this one-hit wonder, and I'm still going at it, so, like, what's going to come of that? Is this it? Because this is pretty good, but it's not in my top 10.
Yeah.
After that, I had Vince Staples. I have two after this. What Now by Sylvan Esso, who I'd never heard of before this year, and a good friend of mine, shout out to Sean, we send each other, we had started a podcast a couple of years ago, and it never ended up taking off because we lived so far away, but we still talk to each other quite often. We give each other musical recommendations, and he sent me this, and I was like, oh, is it hip-hop? And he's like, well, it's kind of more like pop than hip-hop, and I think he just said that because he knew I wouldn't listen to it, and it's just a straight-up pop album. But I have completely fallen in love with it. It is, I guess, I'm new to the term dream pop, but I believe it falls under that genre. And it's just very, it's a kind of an electronic pop duo, and it falls into this very minimalist electronic music that has a tendency to bring a very warm, busy chorus. And you just kind of have a woman with beautiful vocals that just sounds wonderful, and the lyrics are kind of fun, and over these very pretty minimal electronic. It sounds very innocent sounding. It's very kind of what an electronic style similar to kind of what is written for Adventure Time, which is the only thing I can kind of compare it to. Just a very soft electronic drum pads and like beep boop, like, instrumentation, and just for a very nice, happy, like very touching album. And
I didn't get to that one. I gotta try that out.
Easily gonna be in my top 10. Love it.
That sounds really good.
Absolutely love it. Bought it on vinyl the day after I listened to it.
Oh, man.
Loved it. And the last one is another EP, Accelerator by Paul White and Danny Brown. Not much to say about it. It's 4 songs. 2 songs, and then the instrumental versions of the 2 songs. So it's a 2-song EP with the instrumentals included. It's great if you're a fan of Danny Brown. It's a very different style than Atrocity Exhibition, his latest album. So he kind of just has this warm, amped up, like more upbeat sound, which is very different from the depressive tones of Atrocity Exhibition. And that is just very good. Every time I listen to it, I listen to the whole thing, even the instrumental versions, 4 songs, great production, great sound, great lyricism. And that's it. So that was my list of 80,000 fucking albums. But you like that hard fucking that I just dropped to make up for my frickin' earlier? 80,000 fucking albums. So now we have spent so much time on that. I really want to get in the video games.
Okay.
Because I haven't played any of the games that you have put on your list, but you sent me the list, and I watched the trailers for them, nice. And I was so interested in some that I can't wait to play them.
Oh, cool!
And I only had one game for mine, so
nice. What's your game? We'll do the back and forth thing again.
I literally did not even find myself loving it that much. The only new game I've played from this year is Resident Evil 7, and I just think, like I kind of talked about it earlier, I feel like you're playing an experience more than a game. It just felt like people that had set the tone for what survival horror is are now trying to catch up with what other people have done, and it was okay. People really love it, and I just think it was fine.
Yeah, some people really love it. I haven't seen it. It hasn't. There are definitely games on my list that have gotten like an outpouring of public support, that have really buoyed them to an extent that they would not have found that success otherwise. Resident Evil 7's not one of those games. It came out, and some people really loved it, but a lot more people even, were like, yeah, okay, cool. Kind of like you are.
It had a big buzz when it came out, and then it just kind of...
I think it surprised people after what Resident Evil 6 was and Resident Evil 5. It surprised people that anybody loved a Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
And that's good. Like, I think Resident Evil is a worthwhile franchise to have around, if only for like the massive amount of history that it holds and the fact that it produced Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
The greatest game
the
ever
greatest
made.
game of all. We haven't talked about Resident Evil 4 in so long.
So long. I think once we started talking about Quentin Tarantino, it pushed Resident Evil 4 to the back of our minds. But okay, yeah, Resident Evil 7. Good choice. Haven't played it, but maybe someday I will.
Yep.
My list. All right. I think these are still in the order that I sent them to you in also.
Yes. I actually have the list that you sent me, so I can reference.
You can tell me if I'm right or not about it being... And some games have been taken off that list.
Okay.
So, the first game I played this year that I really enjoyed was Astroneer.
Yes.
Astroneer is a survival and base building game of the sort that, like, Minecraft is kind of the essential foundation for these games. You know, you have deformable terrain, and you have the ability to take materials and move them to other places so that you can build a base, right?
Yep.
Astroneer is my favorite one of these that I have ever found.
It looks incredible,
doesn't it?
There's this beautiful cell shading and
just it's not even
interesting look.
I don't think it's even cell shading. It's just that the way the terrain deformation works is like so well programmed that the way the land looks tells you how it's going to behave when you deform it. It's all just triangles, right?
Yeah.
That's the secret of all video game graphics. It's just a bunch of fucking triangles, right? Just move those triangles around on the screen. Suddenly you've got, anime girls jumping around.
Yeah.
We'll
now
get
look
to
at
that
you,
later.
game designer.
Yeah. Now take this gift I've given you and run with it. Move those
Give
triangles.
me my next favorite game of this year.
Yeah, Astroneer is great. My favorite Astroneer moment, and I don't know if this came across in the trailers, but when you start playing Astroneer, you can't move very fast, and you don't realize how slow you're moving because it's like pretty dense around you.
Yeah,
you're gathering your resources and you're building your base up and you're having a good time. But the moment that you get access to a vehicle for the first time is incredible. Because suddenly it's like, the survival mechanic is probably important. You have two resources, basically, that you consume just by being away from your base. You have to manage your oxygen, which lets you stay alive, and you have to manage your energy, which lets you continue using your abilities.
So Minecraft.
Minecraft has like hunger and like health
and
as well.
Nighttime is kind of your schedule for I need to get back to base.
Right, exactly. And in Astroneer, interesting point, the signal that you need to get back to the base is dust storms.
Oh, yep.
Dust storms will destroy you. It's like an instant death. But because of the way the terrain deformation works, if you see a dust storm coming, you can literally just dig a hole in the ground and hang out there,
hide from it
until the storm passes by. But it's a really intense moment because
I did see in the trailer how the dust comes and a giant boulder flies at this, and wipes everybody out.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to play this game. It looks phenomenal.
It's really good. The thing about Astroneer is it is not done yet. It's still in early access. So you can get to the point where you're actually like, you have an up and running base, you've got solar power everywhere that's like making all your shit run, and then you can build a spaceship and you can go to other planets, right? You can like go to the moon, but those planets are not done yet.
Yeah.
They're not anywhere near as interesting as the starting planet. So maybe if you like playing finished games, maybe put off Astroneer for a couple years.
This game looks like, for me personally, a game where I'm almost glad you said that, because I feel like just learning the mechanics would be enough. Like, I would almost feel overwhelmed knowing there are other planets to be explored.
Yeah. Yeah. Astroneer is a really cool idea for a game, and right now it is part of a really good game.
Yeah.
My next game is a game called Nier Automata, which I've talked about a couple times.
I've heard of this game.
Have you heard about this? Who did you hear about it from?
The only person I've ever heard talk about it is you.
Yeah, me. I have very strong feelings about Nier Automata because as loyal listeners will remember, when I first started playing it, I had no idea what the hype was about. But as I have continued to play it, I get what the hype is about.
Yep.
In fact, I think people are maybe underhyping this game. for how monumental an achievement it is in big budget games. I'm going to tell you my favorite moment that I've had in Nier Automata, and it's spoiler heavy. All right, so warning to people at home: skip forward until you stop hearing me talk about androids.
Until the spoilers are over.
Until the spoilers are over, you'll know. My favorite moment in Nier Automata is the main quest line of the game involves you killing these machines. It becomes clear.
14th Robot War, correct?
It's many robot wars into the future. I don't know.
Many robot wars.
You're killing these machines, and they don't really look like people, but they have like the trappings of people. And you realize pretty quickly through your first playthrough, your first of 5 to get the full story, that these machines have developed a society, and that they've developed something that, even if it's not technically what we would consider sentience, they've developed something that looks enough like sentience that you feel weird killing them.
Little I Am Legendy.
A little bit I Am Legendy.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. And as the game progresses, your main quest line never strays away from killing these machines. And then I'm in my 3rd playthrough right now, and I just got fucking sick of it. I got sick of the main quest line, and I started thinking to myself, like, what if I just am not into this game anymore? Shit got really disturbing. Like, it got to the point where for a main quest, I would go into this area, which was just arenas full of robots. And while I was killing these robots, they would yell things like, please don't. They would yell things like, please have mercy on me. Or like, oh God, not again. Or like, the pain. These are the barks where usually from enemies in a video game and an action game, you'd hear like, fuck you, or like, I'm gonna kill you. This was just robots begging me to stop killing them. So eventually I started to feel like maybe I should just stop killing these robots. But then what would I do was the question. So I decided to take the plunge, not knowing what I was going to do instead. Took the plunge, ignored the main quest line for a little bit, for a couple hours, And in that couple hours, I just wandered the world. I just looked at stuff in the world. I went on these little side quests, which are so much more interesting and engaging than the main quest, which is all fighting. Like, I helped an archaeologist in the desert find some artifacts from past civilizations, which were our human civilization. So it's like, oh, I found this weird old book. What do you think about this, archaeologist? And then he says some shit like, makes me think that this society was probably obsessed with rules. It was like a religious text that you handed to me. He's like, this society was so obsessed with rules that they bounded themselves in with a prison of rules. It's like, that's pretty profound for a fucking anime girl game, right? But then even farther than that, I started seeing things in the distance that weren't even... No quest was directing me towards this. But in the desert, towards the edge of the desert, there's these like dust storms, right? And if you go up to it, it'll kind of push you back, unless you're following this line of trees that leads you out farther and farther into the desert. Like big palm trees, like desert trees. So I followed these trees for like a couple minutes, walking through this sandstorm. And eventually the storm cleared away. And there was this beautiful oasis with just like palm trees everywhere and like beautiful clear blue water in the middle. And one character there who just says pleasant stuff to you. Like, oh, you found me. Hey, cool.
Yeah.
Try fishing.
Yeah.
And there's this whole fishing mechanic that I had never gone into before in the game because I was so busy killing machines. But fishing is fun as hell. Like, you have to position yourself in interesting ways in comparison to the water. You, like, push the fish around a little. You can't, like, see the fish. But you remember fishing in Ocarina of Time?
Yeah.
It's exactly like that.
Okay.
Not exactly like that. Ocarina of Time fishing is still a little bit better, in my opinion, just because there are more fish to catch. But Nier Automata's fishing, like, kept me entertained for like half an hour, and you're just looking at this beautiful game the whole time you're doing it. No mission sent me there, nothing. I don't know. This has been a long-winded way of saying that Nier Automata does things a little bit differently, and for that I love it.
I'm gonna pull the curtain back a little bit for you listeners. This is an audio show. Anytime that you have talked about Nier Automata, I've never heard anyone talk about it but you until I watched the trailer a couple days ago. I had never seen anything about it. So I had in my head, it's like when you picture somebody else's job.
I hadn't thought about this, but this is interesting.
You go to it and you're like, oh shit, this isn't what I pictured it. I've never been here before. I had built this world of what I thought Nier Automata looked like, and I don't know why. This entire time until I watched this trailer, I thought it was a RPG looking game in the style of like a Super Nintendo, like a 32-bit, like a Final Fantasy.
Well,
Stardew Valley.
I've made a lot of comparisons to those kind of games.
So this whole time that I was thinking about it, I was basically picturing like Stardew Valley with like a Metroid style overlay, you know, where you might be looking through the mask and seeing your HUD and stuff. But like with Super Nintendo graphics, and I have no idea why I thought that.
That's a pretty cool sounding look, though.
But
I'm gonna have to investigate that a little more.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. That
Yeah.
Doesn't look anything fucking like that.
Because that is not what Nier Automata looks like.
It's actually beautiful.
Nier Automata looks like realistic.
Yeah.
Nier Automata is a massive open world that you control from like a third-person perspective behind your character. And huge buildings, like not the best kind of level design architecture I've ever seen, but good level design architecture. Like each area feels unique. It has a unique look. Yeah, if you're interested, look up a trailer for Nier Automata. You may be surprised at how much you like it.
Yeah, maybe you were picturing what I was picturing, and right now you're like, what?
It's not like a Chrono Trigger remake?
Yeah. You know, I don't know if you took it off your list, but I do have to mention, I thought the trailer for OneShot looked pretty interesting.
I did take the trailer. I did take OneShot off my list.
Yeah.
It just didn't stick with me that much, but it's a really cool idea.
It fits. It might not be a quality of game that I need in my life, but it fits my interests of like a I keep thinking post-apocalyptic, but that's not necessarily the word I'm looking for.
That's just a word to describe OneShot. Definitely.
Just the dystopian is the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
Just a dystopian exploration, which is really super up my alley. I'm super into like, Fallout, Planet of the Apes, even Adventure Time. A little that something happened before us here, and I always find that very interesting, and that's what that game looks like.
Yeah, that game is consumed with those ideas, definitely. Keep an eye on OneShot. Maybe if it comes up on a sale or something, because it's pretty short, and I think you might dig it. I don't really know why it didn't stick with me. It might just be that I played it too long ago.
Yeah.
But it's charming. It's pretty funny. It doesn't do that much stuff that really stuck out to me in terms of structuring itself. It's an adventure game. Yeah. Essentially, like a top-down. And it's an adventure game played from the perspective of an old Japanese RPG, with the gimmick, of course, being that you have one shot at it.
Yeah.
You can't go back and change your choices after you've done it. And considering, like, the main choice in the game is sort of Dark Souls style. It's like, hey, this world is about to die because light is leaving it. Do I want to relight this lamp, or do I want to let it fade away? Yeah. That's the essential choice of OneShot. But yeah, that's a neat game too. Moving on from Nier Automata, which I'm still in the process of playing. I still haven't finished it, but it's so good. The part I'm at, I just can't wait to go play it. After that is a game called Unexplored. Mm-hmm. Did you watch the trailer for this one?
I did. I'm actually rewatching it right now.
Yeah. It is a what we in the biz call a roguelike, which means basically that it has randomly generated levels and permadeath. Those are to me, those are the two essential components that make something a roguelike. It makes Spelunky a roguelike as well.
Yep.
Some people prefer to call these roguelites, and they think that something called a roguelike needs to be more like the actual game Rogue, which is to say it needs to have ASCII graphics. It needs to just have like letters for graphics instead of other stuff, and it needs to be like a traditional RPG where you collect gear and collect magic spells and stuff. But yeah, Unexplored is really interesting for reasons that are kind of nerdy to get into. Ever since playing Spelunky for the first time, I've been interested in the idea of procedural level generation, and of procedural level generation as a type of level design. Are you familiar with procedural, quote-unquote procedural generation? It just means that instead of taking all the pieces of a level and putting them together yourself. You kind of build the pieces separately and then give the program a set of rules that determines how those pieces are put together.
Like Animal Crossing.
Like Animal Crossing, exactly. Animal Crossing is a great example of procedurally designed levels.
I'm learning.
It's like we know we're going to have the shop somewhere, we know we're going to have a river somewhere, we know trains at the top, oceans at the bottom, but what you fill that middle part in with is different every time you load an Animal Crossing level. Similarly in Spelunky, we know we're going to have a place the player starts the level, we know there's going to be a place the player ends the level, we know that they need to be able to get from the start to the end without using bombs, at least for the first part, and there are some exceptions to that with like slight bugs in Spelunky once you've played it enough times. Every once in a blue moon, you'll get a level where like a corner intersects with another corner in a way that looks really unnatural. It's like, oh shit, this wasn't supposed to happen. This is an impossible situation. But the rest of the levels are so good that you kind of forgive it that. The problem with procedurally generated levels is that a hand-designed level teaches you something, right? A really great level teaches you how to play the game in a certain way and then tests that way of playing the game. Really great levels I'm talking about, something like the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time. Yep. I think that level is just a masterpiece because it teaches you that water raising and lowering mechanic, and then it tests you over and over again. Like, all right, what if the key is up here, but the way that you move the water is over here?
You were literally the first person I've ever heard speak highly of the Water Temple, and
it's really hard.
It fucking makes sense to me now that I know you a little bit more. You fucking would love the Water Temple.
The Water Temple is a great piece of level design. It is hard as balls, though, is the thing. And that's why I think a lot of people hate it. Yeah. It's really tough. But it's really rewarding as well, because it doesn't repeat itself. It doesn't condescend to you. It's like, all right, here's the fucking situation. There's a key that you need. It's at the bottom. Yeah. Right at the start. But the cool thing in, say, the Water Temple in a really great level is that it's all kind of interconnected. It doesn't feel like random pieces put together. It feels like a level designer has intentionally put these pieces here.
They made this puzzle for you to solve.
They made this puzzle for you to solve. And Spelunky kind of gets around that need by having by having gravity, basically. Gravity is the thing that makes Spelunky work. And Derek Yu, the designer of Spelunky, has written as much, I think, in his book about Spelunky, is that gravity is the core of that game. Because if you could just move wherever you want at any time, there's no challenge left.
Yeah.
The challenge is in, like, all right, when I throw this bomb, what's it going to do?
Yeah.
Or, like, if I jump down this pit, how fast am I going to be going when I pass by the arrow trap? Is it going to kill me, or is it going to kill the spider that I want it to kill?
Yeah.
It's those little mental calculations that you make in Spelunky. Anyway, that's a sidebar. The reason I love Unexplored is because fucking somehow they did something that they call, I've watched videos about it, they call it cyclic level generation. And somehow it makes levels that are like Zelda dungeon quality. I don't honestly know that much about how it works, but it works.
It really reminded me of like the way it looked, the first Zelda game, the way the dungeons appeared. It looked very much like that.
Absolutely, but it's like, so that cool moment in let's say Link to the Past, for instance. That cool moment in Link to the Past in the I forget which dungeon it is. It's one of the later ones. It takes place in the woods, and you like.
I've never gotten very far into that game.
Yeah, it's a good game. It's all right. It's not as good as Ocarina of Time. Certainly not as good as Majora's Mask.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to it in the Zelda series. But the cool thing in that level is that, like, I'm in the dungeon for a while, and now I'm just out in the world for a little bit. I'm, like, going in the woods. Oh, I found a key. Now I'll go back in the dungeon to this door that couldn't open
maybe
before.
Similar Shadow Temple-y, where you kind of explore it as a kid in Ocarina of Time, and then leave, come back as an adult to finish the puzzle.
The Shadow Temple's a weird situation, because the Shadow Temple, the part I think that you're thinking of, is the part where you get the Lens of Truth from the sewers in Kakariko Village. Okay. So you don't explore that. I guess it is kind of like that, actually. But the Shadow Temple itself is like, to make up for that really interesting piece of world design, the Shadow Temple is kind of a linear piece of shit. I like it. I like it because the shadow. But in terms of like,
you just go from such like analytical words to just, it's kind of just a linear piece of shit. Like,
let me dig into that a little more. We're talking way more about Zelda than I meant to, but Zelda is the best touchstone for what makes Unexplored really great. So I think that getting a little sneak peek into the way that we're going to talk on our Zelda series is helpful here, just for like having a baseline to talk about Unexplored. So the Shadow Temple itself is, to me, the birthplace of Dark Souls. Dark Souls takes like just the combat of Ocarina of Time and like blows it out into this whole other thing. The Shadow Temple is the place where that game proves that, like, if this game was just about combat, it would still be pretty damn good, right? That's Ocarina of Time kind of flaunting it for you. It's like, there are parts of this game, like, the combat doesn't really get used that much in Ocarina of Time, considering how good it is.
Yeah.
The Shadow Temple is the place for the combat to shine. And, of course, it also has the under the well lens of truth thing going for it as well. What was I talking about? It's that cyclic level generation in Unexplored. So it's like it starts with a loop, and then it builds extra loops coming off that loop. And what you end up with is a level where you go in and you don't know what to expect. It's not linear. Where should I spend this key? You know, where does it make the most sense to spend this key? There's a line of sight in this game. So like if you haven't looked at something, it's just dark. There's like fog of war over it. Is it worth going through this door? Maybe I'll peek through a little peek hole in the wall to see if maybe this room is worth investigating more. Or like, oh shit, it looks really dangerous up there. Let's see if I can, like, kind of Spelunky style, like, mine my way around this dangerous situation. Or even, you can go up and down between floors of the dungeon, which is not something you can do in Spelunky. You can go up and down between floors of the dungeon in Unexplored. So you can find, like, a chest or something, some kind of plaque on the wall in level 2 that says, like, it's in a riddle form, but it basically says, come back when you have this thing. And then you find that thing in level 7.
Yeah.
And then you have to climb back up to level 2. You know, maybe going different routes, maybe not going different routes, what have you. I've talked enough about Unexplored. It's a great game. I really look forward. I'm sure that this idea of, like, cyclic level generation, making what are seriously most of the time Zelda quality dungeons, but there's just an infinite number of them.
Yeah.
I trust that at some point people are gonna start to steal that idea for other things, and I really look forward to that day. And I think that we're gonna look back at Unexplored as like the flashpoint in procedural level generation. Now, that is not to say that games like Rogue or Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup is a really good one have not already done things like this, but Unexplored is the one that takes that idea and makes it more approachable than those games. And I think that's important for getting a lot of eyes on this idea that can then start to think, you know, those eyes can attach to brains that start to think about, like, how can I apply this same principle in other ways, in other games, maybe in other genres of game even. And there may come a day when people don't need to design levels anymore. I mean, people will always design levels because of, you know, whatever, because you can make better art for a level that you design by hand, or because they're like, you couldn't procedurally generate a game like The Witness, which I don't think I've talked about that much on the podcast before, but I've definitely talked about it in my life. It's a puzzle game. It's all about everything that you see being important. You can't generate a level like that with cyclic level generation, but you can generate a level like, you know, as I keep comparing it to, a Zelda dungeon.
Yep.
It turns out you can make a pretty damn good one of those. All right. Moving on. Everything. This year I played everything. I
guess this will be like a good cliffhanger for this, a good foreshadowing. I looked for a trailer for this. I'd never heard of it, and I looked for a trailer, and the only trailer was like 8 minutes long. It was a gameplay trailer. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I'll watch a few minutes of this and get the gist of it. And I became so entranced that I watched the entire thing, and I was like, I need to play this game. I need to see what this is about. So, enlighten everyone else.
Everything, I wrote it, everything is an interactive work of philosophy where you can be everything. It by work of philosophy, I mean it has like audio clips in it from a philosopher named Alan Watts, whose work is not controversial, but it's not. I don't think there are a lot of people like living their lives based on the principles that Alan Watts delivered to us. From what I've read, from the limited research that I've done, it sounds like Alan Watts took a lot of ideas of like Eastern Buddhist mysticism and transplanted them to the California coast of the 1960s in America, and found pretty fertile ground for these ideas that like everything is connected and everything everything perceives itself to be a person. You got a taste of that narration in the trailer, and yeah, it kind of continues like that. Everything you saw in that trailer, including the like flashes at the end, are like just the tips of the iceberg in terms of what you do in that game. You get this tool set as the game progresses. Okay, let me backtrack a little bit. What is the experience of playing everything? The camera is third person, and you start out as a cow. And from being a cow, you walk around a little bit as a cow, quote unquote walk.
Yeah.
You kind of roll as a cow, because you can be everything. He couldn't animate a walking animation for everything. If this game was made by one person.
Jesus.
Yeah, it took him a long time, but just one person made this game. An artist named David O'Reilly. His previous work includes a game called Mountain, which is also really good. But you kind of roll around as this cow, you move around as this cow, and eventually the game tells you, hey, try being something else. So you're like, ooh, I wonder what I could be. Maybe I could be this swan over here. And the game's like, yeah, be that swan. And then eventually you've been like every animal. So you're like, I wonder if I can be the bush. And the game is like, yeah, go be the bush.
Go be that bush.
Yeah,
You
can totally be that bush. Walk around as a bush. And it's like, oh, trees, boulders, clouds, planets, continents. You can be everything. You can be the solar system. You can be the sun itself. You can be the galaxy. You can be like abstract mathematical concepts at a certain point in that game. And throughout the game, you're finding these little pieces of narration, and you're also unlocking new abilities for yourself. Eventually, you can generate new items. Not new. Anything you have been, you can just make a copy of it in the world. That was probably a really unpleasant sound that I just made.
Actually, it didn't look like it was too bad.
Okay, I think I dodged it around the... Yeah. You can make a copy of it, and by that popping sound, I just mean it pops into existence, right? And you can make things bigger or smaller. You can make things dance with each other. You can like find the limits of the levels and start to explore like, oh, where does this start to loop? And
yeah, that was one thing that really interested me, was you find this, object that you've decided you want to be, and you keep exploring it closer and closer, and it just keeps breaking down until you're looking at the DNA of the cow that you just were walking around
and then you go inside the DNA.
And I was just wondering, like, how deep is this gonna go? Like, are we gonna go like subatomic here? Like,
it goes forever. It goes forever in all directions.
It was crazy. Without having played it, just having watched the trailer, it pushed the boundaries of what I thought a game could be. And I think that doesn't come along very often. Or if it comes along to me in a way like Minecraft. You're like, I didn't realize the game could be so simple and still be so amazing. This kind of just like, I didn't know that this could be a game. Like,
I didn't know you could do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything is a very impressive game. Oh, and just to stay up with our thing, Astroneer probably isn't going to be one of my top games of the year. Nier Automata certainly is. Unexplored certainly is, and Everything certainly is.
I'm very excited to play Everything and Astroneer. Those were kind of the two I think that I really walked away from. Like
Astroneer is the seed of a really great game right now. It's just a matter of what direction they take it. Because right now, like I said, you hit that thing in other early access games where it's like, I'm kind of done. I've done everything I can do, and the stuff that they don't have the full progression worked out. But okay, that's Everything. After that, I played a game called What Remains of Edith Finch. A very cool game, kind of a story game. A story game about this family that like lives on, I don't know, one of the coasts. I think it might be the West Coast. And this family is cursed. They keep on dying. People just don't live long in this family. So it's a game full of grief and a game about ways that people cope with grief. So it's some pretty heavy stuff. And it doesn't necessarily always handle that stuff with the best touch. It's not like tasteless in any way. It's sometimes, I guess it sometimes feels a little bit cliche or a little bit easy. Like it's not offering a unique perspective on this issue. It's offering the perspective on this issue, or like an agreed upon perspective on this issue of grief, of dealing with like familial death. But the thing that I love about it is really how it looks. The visual design of this game is amazing. It's realistic graphics, and it's narrated as well. It's very much a story game. But as you walk around, the words appear in the world around you, and you kind of watch them appear and disappear.
Okay, that explains some of the stuff I saw in the trailer of like, why are there giant letters that you're swimming around? Like
that's the narration.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of really creative stuff with that idea of letters of narration appearing in the world. They also do a lot of really creative stuff with gameplay, which is not something you'd expect. Like there's a derisive term for this type of game called a walking simulator. I don't know if you've heard that.
No.
It's kind of, after Gone Home came out, people made fun of it, and they were like, it's just a walking simulator. Like, you don't do anything in this game. Ignoring, of course, that in Gone Home, the thing that you actually do is, like, read an environment and explore a house, explore one of, in my opinion, and, you know, based on our Zelda discussion from before, you can tell I have a lot of opinions about level design. But Gone Home is one of the best designed levels in the history of video games. And the people saw this game and said, it's just a walking simulator. So that's become kind of the de facto term for games where you walk around and look at an environment. And I hate that term. I like the term secret box or puzzle box, which was proposed by a writer called Joel Goodwin on his website Electron Dance in an article called "Screw Your Walking Simulators." He goes into why, like, the game, what you do, your verb in this game is walking. But what you're actually doing is not walking. What you're doing is unraveling a mystery, right? So if we stopped calling them walking simulators, it might give people a better idea of what's actually good about these games. It might cause these games to get out to a wider audience. Yeah. And considering that, in my opinion, this is one of the most fertile grounds of game design going right now, getting these games out to a wider audience would be a very good thing. Why did I talk about any of that? Because I'm talking about What Remains of Edith Finch. And the fact that you walk to get to the different chapters, but when you're actually in the different chapters, you do a wide variety of things. Maybe you're a cat jumping through trees. Maybe you're some kind of like tentacle monster, like pulling yourself through a boat. Maybe you are a man at his job, just standing there cutting fish heads off, right? And you're doing all of this stuff. You're not just watching it happen. You're manipulating the controller in tactile and interesting ways to cause these things to happen. That's the interesting thing about What Remains with Edith Finch. What Remains of Edith Finch, rather. After that is a game... What Remains of Edith Finch probably will be on my year-end list. If it's not, then it's going to have been a great rest of the year.
It'd be a really good fucking year.
Yeah, but it's not a lock by any means.
Yeah.
Also not a lock is a game called Dead Cells.
Okay.
It's another procedurally generated kind of dungeon crawler game, but the thing about Dead Cells is that it has really great fluid feeling combat. You feel it feels responsive. The things that you do to the controller, your character does exactly. As you can probably tell by the name Dead Cells, it is a bit like Dark Souls. It's like they're trying to make like a procedurally generated Dark Souls combat game.
It's more platformy. Correct.
It is more platformy. You've got though the platforming stuff, unless they improve it, it's in early access as well. It's not done. Unless they improve the platforming stuff, I'd really rather they just take it out.
Yeah.
Because right now the platforming stuff is not interesting to play. It's all about the combat. It's all about they have many different types of enemies in the game already. The enemies are all pretty well distant from each other in terms of their abilities, in terms of the ways that you need to kind of tactically deal with them. Which to me is the great thing about it, like a game that's focused on combat. That's the fun part, is figuring out how to deal with the enemies in these particular environments. So right now they have the core of a really great combat dungeon crawler, right? You're rolling around, you're using your sword, you're using a variety of different weapons. Even.
As I say, looking like you're doing some very complex strategies and combos. And...
Big combos. You're gaining abilities as you explore this dungeon. Well, it's not really a dungeon. It's kind of structured like a Castlevania, or like one of the old 2D Castlevanias, where you go through these discrete levels and you kind of climb a tower as you go, and it gets more and more challenging as you move along. What have you. So yeah, that's Dead Cells. I really hope it gets a lot better. The ultimate version of this game that it becomes in the long run could end up on my year-end list of whatever year it comes out, but probably not this year. My next game is a game called Ladykiller in a Bind. Things are going to get a little weird. All right. Did you watch the trailer for this one?
I actually every time you mention one, I look at the trailer again, because you had a lot of games
I sure did
on your list, and I didn't want to get them confused with each other. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually looking this one up again to see if I had watched this one. I think I watched them all.
Yeah. Ladykiller in a Bind is a visual novel. That's a genre of games that's much more popular in Japan. Most people who make visual novels are Japanese, but there's a pretty good kind of crowd for them in the United States.
I like that they have a family-friendly trailer.
Yeah, that kind of leads into the other thing about Ladykiller in a Bind, which is that, like many visual novels, it is pornography.
Wow, okay.
Yeah,
I see that now.
Ladykiller in a Bind is technically a work of pornography, and it feels like a work of pornography. Like, there are a lot of sex scenes in this game.
Yeah.
But the premise of the visual novel is that you are a young woman called the Beast, whose twin brother, the Prince, these are just what I called them in my game. You get like a list of options. I think these are the canon names. My brother, the Prince, or her brother, the Prince, has stolen her motorcycle and forced her to go on a end of senior year of high school cruise with all of his classmates and win this popularity contest that they have, which would net him $5 million.
Okay.
And that's going to get her motorcycle back. The way you win the popularity contest is by collecting people's votes. But along the way, you get to know all these different characters. You get to know all of his classmates. He went to an elite private school where you went to public school, so you don't really know these people. So you're getting to know them. But you're also getting to know what they think of the Prince. And because they cannot find out, or, you don't want them to find out that you are not the Prince, you have to read how they're acting towards you and figure out how you should respond to what they're saying.
That sounds complicated.
It is pretty complicated, but the game all plays out as a series of conversations. That's all it is, interactive conversations.
I see there's a 3-hour and 43-minute walkthrough of the whole thing on YouTube.
I think it took me a little longer to play than that, which means I'm very bad at visual novels. It just means I'm a slow reader, I guess. Which probably also means I'm bad at novels, which is an interesting thought to have.
Who's the book guy now, Ben?
It's certainly not me. It's this guy on YouTube. The thing that I love about it is this really unique conversation mechanic where in most games, let's think about most games, like a Fallout. Fallout's a good touchstone for this. It also has interactive conversations and has had interactive conversations for all of the games. Whatever the quality of writing is in an individual Fallout game, the structure of the conversation stays the same. Person talks to you, and then you get a list of options of what you can say. It works pretty well for a game, and there have been some great stories told like that, but it's not really realistic to how a conversation works. The way it works in Ladykiller in a Bind is much closer, I think, to the way it really works, which is as the other person is talking, you get ideas in your head of things that you could say. whenever you choose to say one of those things, it just interrupts the other person. Right? Their current line plays out, and then you say the thing you were thinking of.
What if you don't say anything and try to let them finish?
If you don't say anything and just let them finish, then they will eventually prompt you for your opinion. If you continue to not say anything at that point, they will think that you're a silent weirdo. And then, your character has some autonomy outside of you, so she will say things like, hey, I just didn't have an opinion, I guess. But that makes you seem really suspicious. Because the thing about the prince is that he is widely hated at his school, and he's extremely loquacious. Right? So that makes people think, like, why is the prince acting so weird? We need to keep an eye on him.
What's up with this guy?
What's up with this dude? Why is he not acting like himself? And eventually, it never happened to me, but presumably they find out that you are not him and then lock you in the brig or something. So, yeah, I love that conversation system. Things will occur to you as the other person is talking, but you'll think, like, maybe that's not quite what they meant. Maybe that's not what the prince would say. And eventually, the ideas go away. So the course of the conversation continues, but you're just able to interrupt it and steer it in different directions.
Oh, man.
It works really well for this game that is all about social interaction. That's what you need for a game about social interaction, is a model of conversation, a model of interactive conversation that more closely fits what an actual conversation sounds like. You have ideas, and then you wait for the person to give you an opening, and like I'm not doing with you right now. And then
if you wait too long, you can't talk about OneShot anymore. No.
So that's Ladykiller in a bind. It's a really cool game. But all that talk about conversation should not make people forget that it is pornography.
Yeah, a lot of nudity.
It is also a lot of nudity, but what you can do is you can put it on safe for work mode, which is what I played most of the game with. Where it just... I played it for the articles.
Lame.
What safe for work mode does is it puts ugly Christmas sweaters over all the nudity. The porn scenes play out exactly the same.
Oh.
Well, it's... I don't think there's any penetrative sex in the game, because you're a lady pretending to be a dude, so it's a lot of like passionate kissing and like over the shirt stuff.
Sounds pretty Japanese.
It is very Japanese. No tentacles.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, you lost me.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. What are we talking about?
Why are we here?
This is Tentacle Cast.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I love. That's one thing about it, is that it is pornography, but you can tell the game to skip all the sex scenes as well. If you're uncomfortable with that and you just want to play the conversation game, then you can say like, all right, skip.
Why though? No.
When I replay this game, because there are so many different ways you can take your character. There are so many different people you can reveal yourself to in different ways that I think it would hold up really well. And it's on a time limit. It's 7 days. Yeah. And it's kind of like it's a little bit like a Stardew Valley or a Harvest Moon, where you have only a limited amount of time each day to do different activities and to talk to different characters. So I didn't go down all the story routes as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go back in, explore them again. That's one thing that I love. The other thing that I love is, like I said, you can skip all the sex scenes. The third thing that I love is that the writing's just really friggin' good.
Is it?
Like, it's really socially aware. I keep leaning closer to the microphone, so my voice is probably getting like.
I don't know if it makes that much of a difference.
Okay, all right. The story is really socially aware, but it's not just like it's not preachy.
Yeah.
A lot of people have kind of picked individual lines out of this game and said, "Oh, that sounds preachy." That character saying like, at the beginning of a sex scene, for instance, it'll say like, "This doesn't need to." I want you to be really into this. It's very interested in the idea of consent, and the idea that acquiring consent at the beginning of a sexual act does not have to be an unsexy thing. It doesn't have to mean like grinding things to a halt and saying like, all right, sign this paperwork so that you don't bring me to court. It can be more fluid than that. It can be about like working out boundaries. That's probably the core of the game, is like working out boundaries with different characters.
I find it interesting that on a game with such fluid way of choosing the way to steer a conversation, that it has wealthy conversations. Like in my head, I would think that it would have to be somewhat vague to be able to steer it and have it end up okay. So it's interesting to me that it does have such a good flow of dialogue, and that it's meaningful dialogue.
There's a real art to that, because there are a lot of games that try to do the interactive fiction thing that don't do interactive fiction nearly as well as this. And I think part of it is that the developer and writer Christine Love worked on it for a long time. She really worked out all the kinks, pun intended, it's kind of a bondage game. She worked out all the kinks in the game, in the writing, over the course of what must have been many rewrites.
Wow.
To bring the game in line with what she wanted it to be. And I think that she achieved massive success with this video game. Not financial success. As far as I know, it has not sold particularly well, but it should. More people should be paying attention to Christine Love's
Now that we've
games.
done a feeture on Ben and Curt Till It Hurts.
Oh God, yeah.
Miss Love, send us the check for all your new royalties.
Yeah, whenever you can, whenever's convenient for you, Christine. So that's Ladykiller in a Bind. My last game is Ladykiller in a Bind. Probably will be on my end of year list. It's another one kind of like What Remains of Edith Finch, where it's like if this game is not on my list, then it's been a really incredible back half of the year.
Yeah.
But my last game, I'm not even sure if this was on my list. It's Thumper.
It is on the list.
It is on the list.
I don't know if I watched a trailer.
It's the one with the space beetle. You're flying along a track, and there's industrial percussion music playing.
Nope. Doesn't sound like something I've seen.
In there. Thumper is one of the best rhythm games I've ever played.
Oh, rhythm game.
Yeah, it's really simple. So the only controls you use are the thumbstick and the A button.
Okay.
That's it.
Well, Pong action. Not Pong, Atari action.
Exactly. It could be an Atari game, which I think is the mark of a great game a lot of times, especially a great action game.
Do you have the action button?
You got the action
the
button.
Move button.
Hell yeah, the action button is one of the most important parts of video games, you know? But the thing that I love about Thumper is it's hard as nails, but it never feels unfair.
Yeah. That's important. To find that line between challenging and rewarding. And fair.
I've seen some reviewers, Steam reviewers, so pretty low bar of quality on them, but some reviewers on Steam saying that it is actually unfair, but they don't know what they're doing. They were playing the game wrong. And I can kind of tell they were playing the game wrong from the reviews. They were trying to play it like any other rhythm game, which is not how it's supposed to be played. The way Thumper works is you have this track of music that plays. It's not like other rhythm games where the music that's playing, like Guitar Hero, for instance. The music that's playing will actually change based on how well you're doing in Guitar Hero, right?
Yeah.
In Thumper, the music doesn't change, but how well you hit these cues that come flying at you down this straight silver track determines how well your personal instrument in the mix is played.
Oh, okay.
Which might be exactly how Guitar Hero works. I don't know. But the rhythms that are on... Let me try to find a different way to say this. Down the silver track in front of you come different prompts, and you respond to those prompts in different ways. If it's a little dot of blue light, then you press the A button when it's underneath your space beetle, and it kind of, poof, grabs it.
Yep.
If you press the A button and up when a little dot of light comes at you, then suddenly you're flying, and you can hit these other barriers that go along as long as you keep the A button held down. If you're on the ground and you keep the A button held down, then you hit these little barriers that you need to break through or else you'll lose health. When a turn is coming, you need to press down A and hold the direction of the turn, and you'll go around the turn. And I think that's pretty much everything. Sometimes you need to jump just to avoid spikes, but that's pretty much the lay of it. So it's all interactions between the way you're pressing the thumbstick and the way the pattern that you're hitting the A button in. And the effect of perfectly nailing every prompt that comes is that you have the music, which is really great. It's made by a guy from a band called Lightning Bolt. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
I have not.
They're kind of a noise rock band. They don't sound anything like the music from Thumper, but they are very good, like the music from Thumper. It's this percussive nightmare of arrhythmic shit just coming at you. And when you hit all these prompts correctly on this track, you accompany the rhythm of the song that is playing. The more prompts you hit, the better you accompany it. And you don't need to hit all of them to get through the level. Really, all you need to do is do the turns right and do the barriers right, and you'll be fine. But so I guess I would compare it to the feeling of playing Tony Hawk. You know when you're playing Tony Hawk and you have yeah, I'm following. When you're playing Tony Hawk and you nail that level long combo run.
Yep.
And you have to be in the fucking zone.
Yep.
That whole time, that whole 2 minutes. And you have an idea. It's all right, what if I grind this rail and then I take this ramp? Then I fucking, what's the thing called? You revert at the bottom of it. And then I go over here, I grind this rail, I go all the way around these ramps. I'm literally mapping out the warehouse in my mind right now, actually.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I could tell. And then you hop over this, and you grab a bonus, and
smash through that.
Smash through that, you go back up this ramp, and you have this whole line in your head, and executing it perfectly, taking it from an idea that you have to something that actually happens in the game, takes a lot of focus and a lot of dexterity. Yeah. You have to time these moves exactly right. You have to balance yourself when you're grinding.
That sticks out to me. I'm glad you said that, because that makes that more relevant to me, to the idea of balancing these. I have to know where I'm going. I have to know what buttons to press when I get there. Mm-hmm. And depending on what I'm doing, you have to keep in mind that you're thinking about where you're going, what you're going to do when you get there, and balancing where you are now. So that makes the way you described it to me sounded a little like, holy shit, a little overwhelming. But in that, picturing that, I'm like, okay, so that is manageable. I do it all the time. It's just to think about it
it's the form of it. It's what they do to get that out of you. So the essence of playing Thumper is very similar to playing Tony Hawk. That's probably the best comparison I can make, is the feeling of playing Tony Hawk.
I'm gonna love this game.
Especially when you do it perfectly. It's like, wow, I don't know if I could do that again, is the feeling that you get when you do a Thumper level perfectly. You get the S+ rank.
Yeah.
That's always the sign of, this is a little bit of a sidebar, that's always the sign of a great game to me, is if the grading system goes A, B, C, D, E or whatever, that's fuck that game. If the grading system is all right, C is the lowest grade, then you can get a B, then an A. An A is good, but if you do it really well, you get an S rank.
You get the perfect.
You get the perfect. You get S. And I think that's a thing from Japanese games. S stands for super or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, Thumper has S ranks in it, which, of course,
right up your alley.
Means I'm on board from the jump. As soon as I did really well on a level,
I'm a slave to this game until I S rank every level.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Pretty much. It's a really great game. It is a linear Tony Hawk game. But by being linear, it has such a variety of different things. That was a stupid sentence. You ever just say something and then regret it immediately?
All the time.
Thumper never repeats itself. It's always throwing new rhythms at you. But sometimes the rhythms are constituted or are composed of different parts that you have seen before. So it's all right, I need to hit this point of light and then turn left really fast, and then right again, then left again, then A, then right, then left, then A, then right, then left, then right, then left.
So let me ask you this. Have you gotten to the point, or is it possible to get to the point where, on a rhythm game, or if you were, I play guitar, so that's the example that I can think of.
That's another comparison I would make for Thumper, is it feels like learning guitar.
Could you get to a point where you're so familiar with the music you don't need to look? Or is that not?
No, okay. I don't think you can. Maybe if you play for a long time, but it would be like learning to play a musical instrument.
Yeah.
I say a lot. That sucks.
Yeah, I do too.
Edit all those out.
I edit every single one out every week.
Every single one.
Don't listen to it, but I promise
don't
do.
Check.
My worthless promise. I promise.
You're shaking your head as you say it.
I completely promise that.
Pull back the curtain. I'm going to part the kimono again and say that Curtis was shaking his head when he made that promise. So all those ums are still in there.
He's just laughing to himself. Yeah, totally.
I don't think that you could get... I don't think that you would ever want to get so good at Thumper
yeah.
that you can memorize the levels. I think that it's a lot more rewarding. So, like, in Tony Hawk, there are people who can play a level of Tony Hawk with their eyes closed. Oh. But I don't know if that would be fun to me.
Yeah.
The thing that's fun to me in Tony Hawk is, like, I know where I'm going, and I trust myself to be able to read these cues fast enough that I don't have to have it memorized. When I need to grind, I can grind. You know, when I need to do a kickflip, I can do a fucking kickflip. Obviously not in real life. I'm completely unathletic. But in Tony Hawk,
all day.
I can do it. I can do ollies, kickflips. I can do side flips. I can, 360 shove-its, everything. Everything you could possibly want. That's the point that I got to with Thumper. And that's the other thing that I noticed that made me think people were probably playing this game wrong, is a lot of people said it is all about memorization. It is not about memorization. Even in the last levels, there are like 9 stages of like 20 levels apiece. Even in the last levels, there were still some that I was beating on my first try. I wasn't getting a great score because sometimes I would have to revert back to that idea. It's like, all right, I just need to hit the turns and not get killed to make it through this thing. There it is again. But while I was playing this game, I was able to do pretty well on my first try on a lot of levels, which tells me that it's not about memorization. It's about being fucking fast and like getting in the zone and feeling the music and looking forward in the track, observing patterns, thinking like, have I seen these patterns before? But while you're thinking that, you're also executing the actual patterns that are hitting your ship right now, hitting your little space beetle.
That sounds stressful.
It is super stressful, but it's also very doable. It doesn't feel unfair. The other thing about Thumper is that it looks incredible.
Yeah, it did look very impressive when I...
Yeah, that's hard to get across over an audio medium like this, but Thumper, I'll say it right now, Thumper's definitely going to be in my top 10 games of the year at the end of the year. And a big part of that is because it looks and sounds so good. It gives you what I've heard some people refer to as a synesthetic experience, where it feels like what you're seeing and what you're hearing are not two different things. They're all part of one cohesive experience. It's also scary as shit.
Yeah,
the look of it. There's like a giant head.
The quote in the beginning of the trailer said that this game filled me with existential dread, and I loved all of it. It's just blackness extending in all directions, other than like your track, and whatever is like shooting these prompts at you. Great game. Killer ending on this game also. I'm so like, I'm intrigued, but like working on the fact of like, it just doesn't seem like something that would normally appeal to me, but like it sounds and looks interesting. So it's like, I don't know what to like. I don't know what to do with that information.
I will ask you in a pretty direct way that I think will get at whether or not you're going to like it. And this gets at what we were talking about before. When you're playing a Tony Hawk level, do you have a drive to try to do the best you can possibly do?
Very much so.
Will you sit there and repeat the same level over and over again, improving slightly every time until you reach your goal?
I don't want to sidebar too much, but I have a relevant Tony Hawk story regarding that. And the short answer is yes. The long answer is that I love Tony Hawk a lot. I'm very good at Tony Hawk. And I don't say that about myself about a lot of games, but I'm very good at, especially the first Tony Hawk game. And I got to a point, I was doing a Let's Play channel a couple years ago, and we played some Tony Hawk, and I kind of showed that, how much I had played it, and I was pretty good at it. So every level but the last level in the game, I could achieve every goal for that level in 1 2-minute run. All 5 goals. And except the last level. So recently, as I've been playing a lot of Tony Hawk, I thought to myself, I should look up some speedrunners that play Tony Hawk and see if there is a way to get like the last all 5 tapes in the last level. And I found out a couple frightening things while I did this. No, there's not. So that is, the way I do it is about as good as it can be done.
Damn.
The second thing is that some of the strategies that these speedrunners use are the strategies that I have been developing on my own since I was 9.
That's awesome.
So the way that I do it is just about the best way that it can be done.
You've optimized, but you haven't been like a part of the speedrunning community.
No,
you've just been on your own
to find these things out since I was 9 years old. And the other thing is that, not that Tony Hawk is a very popular game anymore.
Should be,
but. And I do not say this lightly because I don't want to make light of it. I am on par with some of the best Tony Hawk players in the world. I have just recently found out. I'm watching speedrunners and I'm like, no, what are you... I'm like, oh my god, I'm better at it than them.
That's incredible.
Like, there are things that you can do in the game, like, you can score so high that it, like, glitches out the score thing, and, like, I can do that on a couple levels, you know? And it's like, wow. Like, I did not know that I was one of the best Tony Hawk players in the world. Like, shit.
How does it feel?
I wish it was, like a more popular game, but then I probably wouldn't be one of the best, so I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
I just found that was a very weird to have one of my favorite games be kind of a more, it was very popular at one point. It has not. The franchise has kind of tanked.
You want to know what I think is holding it back right now? Holding back Tony Hawk, even the earlier games from being very popular, is that there's no easy way to play them on the personal computer.
You think? Yeah.
That in large part, that seems to be what makes a game get a lot of retrospectives. People who make like video retrospectives tend to be PC players.
Yeah.
People who watch them tend to be PC players, and old console games just don't get that much attention. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1, 2, and 3 are all world-class games. Those are all, like, all-timers. Those should all be in the fucking video game canon. Like, that run of games, especially. The Tony Hawk 1, Tony Hawk 2, Tony Hawk 3 all coming out within, 5 or 6 years of each other, if not less.
I actually found out... This is turning into a huge sidebar.
This is another episode that we just need to do sometime. Have to.
Yesterday, shout out to Gwiff from Into the Cave podcast. I traded him some of my GameCube games for a PlayStation 1 and Tony Hawk 3.
Nice.
And, but not the version that I just got from Gwiff, but the PS2 is regarded as one of the greatest video game consoles of all time, and it has 1,000 games for it.
Yeah, the PlayStation 2 was one of the most... It, exploded video games.
Yeah. And Tony Hawk 3 on that console is tied with the highest ranking score of all the games on that console. Mm-hmm. It's tied with, Grand Theft Auto 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, unlike the Metacritic, right?
Yeah. So I'm finding out a lot about myself and Tony Hawk games this past week. I don't want to get too far in that. We'll do a Tony Hawk episode.
We'll do a Tony Hawk episode at some point. We'll need to. I'll need to find a way to play those old games.
Yeah.
I'll just play them here.
I actually think, yeah, you can. We can hang out. We don't have to podcast to hang out. But I think it's strange now because now that computers are so... Well, thanks to Microsoft getting into gaming... They're so
thanks to Valve, especially Steam has been such a part of pushing PC gaming.
Now you can just plug your Xbox controller into your computer, so you can enjoy a game on a computer that like Tony Hawk that you wouldn't have been able to. I've played Tony Hawk with a keyboard.
Sucks.
It is fucking hard.
Yeah.
So you can do that now, but yeah, you can just come play it at my house.
Yeah, totally.
I have all of them.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't want to get too far on our already huge tangent.
Yeah, this is already a pretty lengthy podcast.
Yeah, we're at about 2.5 hours.
Okay. That's Thumper. Thumper is a new Tony Hawk game, but good.
Sold.
Yeah.
To the loser who can't let go of franchise gaming.
No, never let go of Tony Hawk. Never let go of Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk deserves to be remembered, and Tony Hawk deserves to be talked about more than it is right now. I'm going to come out on a fucking limb and say that Tony Hawk deserves that.
One more.
Especially the Game Boy Advance port of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. That's going to be a fun discussion.
That. I think I have that game still.
You should. Everyone should own a copy of that game. It's a surprisingly good port of that game. Port. It's more of a remake.
The last thing I will say about Tony Hawk today is that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5,
if you can't keep it,
which I have not played because I've heard it's just complete dog shit garbage. Is so where Tony Hawk 3 is tied for the greatest game on what a lot of people consider the greatest console of all time. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 is ranked as the 5th worst game on the Xbox One. So,
oh my god.
Pretty polarizing there.
Okay, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 was the one that came out recently.
Like a year, like last year
ago, because they had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 and then like Thug,
Underground,
and
Underground
then
2,
Downhill Jam,
American Wasteland,
Downhill Jam on the DS is another surprisingly good game.
Ride. There's a bunch of Project 8, Proving Grounds.
Yeah, Project 8 because it was the 8th Tony Hawk game to come out,
Yeah.
and then Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 comes out.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Although there was Thug 2.
And then Thaw, which doesn't have as cool of an acronym as...
Yeah, Thaw is not as cool as Thug.
Yeah, American Wasteland there.
Anyway, what's, in your opinion, what is the greatest video game console ever released?
Man, that is tough. I don't know if I can answer that question. Because I think... there are greats. Some of the greatest, I would say, are the Super Nintendo, the PlayStation 2... man, I'd make a fight for the Xbox 360, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And they shine in moments so brightly that other ones can't hold a candle to. So it's like, how do you compare? Xbox 360 made multiplayer games, and it really changed gaming with multiplayer. Super Nintendo had some of the greatest stories and RPGs ever made, but you were limited by the limitations of the system. And then, just, I think depending on what you're looking for, there's so many ways to answer that question. I think the 3DS has pushed portable gaming. I mean, I haven't played the Switch, so I can't compare it. That's kind of portable in its own. But I just think there are so many ways to look at what makes a game console the best. And do you have much insight into that?
It's the GameCube.
Okay, so I agree that the GameCube is a wonderful, underappreciated console, but I think there are ways that the GameCube has limitations that can't be overlooked as the greatest console of all time.
Okay. I think this is a different podcast eventually.
This is gonna
but I like getting our baseline on this.
And I will say, kind of right out the gate, the online limitations, how there were only like 2 games that utilized online. Was like the GameCube has like PSO. 6 ports on the bottom of it that never get used.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I love about that little beast.
And they broke barriers for how you could play games with other people, like with Animal Crossing or like linking between consoles. But it was so barbaric, I think.
The GameCube? I agree that the GameCube was barbaric.
You could go visit another person's Animal Crossing village, but you couldn't do it with them. Or you couldn't alter a memory card in any way between visiting it on another console and putting it back in your own. Or it would... You remember how you'd like ghost out your character? It would like corrupt your... You'd walk around. It's terrifying. You'd walk around, and instead of having your face, you'd have 2 big black circles for eyes.
What?
And either a little black circle for a mouth or like a line or something.
Wow.
And it prevented you from so I couldn't take your card, go visit your town, pull your memory card out, and let you play your town while I was visiting an older version of your town. And then when I reloaded it, it would corrupt. It would be 2 different versions of your town. So limitations like that made it really hard. I do think that there were some phenomenal games and graphics on... The craziest thing about how consoles used to be, and maybe they still are, but I don't necessarily think so. A game could come out on the end of a console toward the end of that console's life, that pushed that console so much further than the launch titles. But by then the next console was already out, so I fucking knew I was going to talk about Tony Hawk again.
I knew you were too.
Tony Hawk 3 on the N64 came out after the PlayStation 2 had come out and after the GameCube, its predecessor. So they ported Tony Hawk 3 back to the N64
because it's missing a lot of shit.
There were still some kids that were playing it, but it's missing so much, and it's such a disappointing port that it's really hard to find now because they didn't make many of them because the console was at the end of its life and it sucked, so it didn't sell well.
Yeah.
So now I can't find a second copy. I don't know what happened to my old one of Tony Hawk 3 on N64 because it's admittedly bad.
Yeah.
So I think the same thing kind of happened on the GameCube. Games like Resident Evil 4 and even some of the video animations in Resident Evil 0 are astoundingly beautiful for the GameCube. There's a flashback scene where one of the characters is like walking through the jungle, and it looks amazing.
That's all pre-rendered stuff.
Yeah, just video stuff. That you never really get to see. You never really get to explore, or even what else could they have done, because it ends to, people want that next console 5 years later.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad we're getting away from that idea that you need to get the new console every couple years. Like, it's gonna die hard, but I think the console generation thing is gonna die.
And I just think, like, you just sacrifice so much. You sacrifice the fine-tuned basic engine to have an okay, better engine. You know what I mean? Like, you have better games with a bigger map, bigger open world, slightly better graphics, but the mechanics that you sacrificed to move on to this newer engine, sometimes you lose the gameplay quality of it.
Sometimes you have to, like, developers seem to have to work so hard to just get a game up and running on new hardware. It's hard to learn new hardware. It's hard to learn to program anything, but, you have to learn the architecture of this new thing. And maybe it's fucking crazy like the PS3 and impossible to program for.
Yeah.
But it does seem like sometimes that makes it so that it's more difficult to cut the bad stuff. So you end up with games that are just not very good. Anyway, we need to end this thing.
We really do, because I just opened up a WordPad to write down ideas to, like, make sure we do a Tony Hawk episode.
Make sure you do a Tony Hawk. Make sure we do
best console
battle royale. These
best
are all good
console
video game
battle
ideas.
royale.
Definitely Zelda episode.
Oh yeah, Zelda episode. We're really opening some doors here.
Planet of the Apes.
Speaking of which, is that our next episode?
Do we want to do that next? Is that movie coming out?
It comes out the 14th. It comes out Friday.
Perfect. Yeah.
So 2 weeks from now, that movie will be out. So it's going to kind of give you guys pressure to see the new one.
Yeah, but not that much pressure.
Yeah, you'll have a couple weeks. So
yep. Yeah.
If you're a Redbox guy, you'll be out of luck. You might want to skip that episode. I mean, you're not going to be able to see it on Redbox by the time the next episode we do comes around. But
right. Okay.
But if you're a moviegoer, not that hard of a restriction.
I just mean, like, I personally have to catch up on those old movies.
Yeah.
Not all the old Planet of the Apes movies, but the old ones in this current reboot series that they're doing.
So the next episode, we will be talking about the Planet of the Apes reboot. So not all the old ones, but would be Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War of the Planet of the Apes.
Can I tell you, I'm starting off on a bad foot with these things already. Because the fact that it doesn't start with Dawn, and then go into Rise, and then end with War, makes not a lick of fucking sense. And it just reeks of poor planning.
Even before they knew they were going to do a trilogy, when it was just the two movies, all the time, I'm like, it really does not make sense that Dawn comes after Rise, but what are you going to do?
It's one of those things where the only reason I can ever get it right is because I have a little tag in my mind that's like, oh, this one works opposite of what you expect it to be.
I'm pretty sure we saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes together.
We did.
Yep.
I really liked it.
Me too. I loved it.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch Dawn.
Have you not seen it?
I have not seen Dawn.
So, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, I will say, maybe as a movie, less engaging than Rise. But if you are a fan of Planet of the Apes, it feels a lot more like Planet of the Apes because you have your very specific sounding soundtrack with the xylophones and the drums.
Oh, neat.
You have apes riding horses. You kind of have those similar, like, this is Planet of the Apes. This is not the beginning of it, which the titles would not imply. But so that's what we're going to be talking about next time. Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War for the Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
This has been a really long episode.
This has been. You get your plugs in?
Yeah, you can follow me at CurtCake5K on Instagram and Twitter. Ben's still working on his website.
So, yeah, I haven't been, honestly.
We also have not worked on our YouTube presence.
We haven't. I've got to get on. I've got to get on that. All I'm going to do is we'll just talk this out on the podcast.
We won't workshop this in any way.
No. All I'm going to do is I'm going to listen through it, tag when we talk about certain things, and then put the tags in the description for different times. Maybe find some kind of background image to put on the episode that I feel sums it up, and slap it on there.
Yeah.
It'll also give me a chance to try out some like video editing software.
Yeah.
Try to get my hands on some of that stuff. Find something that works for me so that when I start actually making videos to put on my website, I can start doing that.
We used to use Sony Vegas.
Sony Vegas?
Yeah.
Okay.
I never did any of it. Dalton did it all. But
all right.
Also, I actually just remembered I put on our list of episodes. I wasn't sure if I should say this out loud because I don't know how private any of these are. Clearly not very.
All right.
We need to do an episode that you brought up where we compare the original and remake of True Grit.
True Grit, yeah.
So the only reason I say that out loud and decide that for the both of us that it is not a secret is because by all means, if any of these sound more interesting to you, let us know. Hit me up. I'm on Twitter and Instagram for a reason. Ben has Facebook for a reason.
I've got Facebook. You know me.
You personally know me. Tell me at work what you want to listen to. We are doing Planet of the Apes next, just to be topical.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all games from 1999, guys.
It is mostly, though.
Mostly. And, 2004, Resident Evil.
Yep.
Resident
Damn,
Evil 4.
2004. Long time ago.
We
already talked about this.
We're just gonna... It's just cyclical. We're just gonna get back into Tony Hawk,
this is
back into Resident Evil 4.
Podcast generation.
Yeah. See how we're coming back to the buzzwords.
Yep. Oh, Jesus. We're going to be here for another 2.5.
Bye, guys.
Bye.